Hello and welcome to Beyond the Isles. Sort of. We are here today. We were missing a few players, so we decided to do something a little bit different. Retrospective to look back over the year. It is next week will be our final session for this year, and then we're taking a 2-week break, and we're going to make a little bit of content here with you today for our YouTube channels and for Patreon and all sorts of stuff. And we wanted to share some love and hang out. Could have done it privately, but we wanted to see you guys. We would have missed you too much. So we're here today. I am joined with Richard, Busy, and Rory, Slate, Hatsu, and Eos respectively. And we are going to have a little chit chat with you guys. We will be taking questions from the audience, of course, and we will be covering some topics to see some interesting takes on the year so far, specifically to the Wandering Isles, since that's mostly what we've done. But yeah, the floor is open. How are we all doing?
Good.
Super duper awesome.
We lost Busy the past.
How you doing, Mr. Roper?
I'm surprised we got you, buddy.
I was tempted. Maybe I'm playing it in the background.
Yeah, right. That's it. Yeah, so I have a couple questions. Gonna go over some stuff. We're gonna break down some stuff and or things while I got my notes in order.
The answer is 7.
So the answer is 7.
No,
right?
the answer is 42.
Ooh.
So over the last few months, I think it was April we started in with the Wandering Isles. So we've done quite a bit. So I want to discuss a few of the arcs that we've undertaken as a group and get some player perspective on it, because now that we're so far beyond like what we've actually begun with, like you're no longer just newbies in the school, and you know there's things have progressed and you're on your first main adventure. It's kind of cool to take a look back and see what brought us here. So I mean, from the moment of really arriving at Maleficums, has and anyone can answer this, but has it really lived up to your expectations from session 0, session 1? Is this what you thought was going to happen, or has this gone a completely different road?
That's a tough question.
From my perspective, no D&D ever goes the way you plan it. So
But that's a DM POV.
But from that perspective, it did exactly what I thought it was going to do, which is not go the way I thought it was going to go. So
You
it's been a very
think that Slate would be caressing a book on the back of a horse by this point?
Exactly. So yeah, like it's elements of it are what I thought would happen. Like, you know, the way the party is heading towards an objective and we're working together, etc. But could I have seen the exact winding path we would take to get to the point we're at now? No, absolutely not. And that's one of the things I loved about making all our characters in secret and them not knowing each other and having to figure all of that out in real time and not have it all pre-discussed, pre-planned, etc.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
For sure. What about you two?
For me, it went exactly the way I thought it would. Yeah, sure. But like, I mean, you can only plan your character to a certain point, and then you have to realize, okay, this is his starting position. But it's like in real life, if you go on a hike that doesn't have a final destination, it's about the way, not about how you go to some place or whatever. It's about enjoying the journey. Yeah. And I felt the same for Hatsu as well. He had his starter points and he prepped a little for his journey. But yeah, the rest really turned out the way I thought it would, especially all the social aspects that he had to explore and learn. Like if you would hike through different countries, you would evolve the same way, because you kind of also feel how everything flows into each other. There is no solid borders. There's always like zones from A to B You know, there is not strict A and B. There is like a lot of flourishing in between, you know, and to let the characters, especially Hatsu, explore this and get a better understanding on, like, there is no nothing is defined 100%. There's always times where you have to value what you've learned, but also evolve with things that you come across that might work better than the things you already knew, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I like this kind of approach and how everything is playing out. I'm quite enjoying it, but no major surprises, to be honest.
No. At this point, we're mostly in we're in the gardening stage, right? So we're just planting seeds. You saw things like Samuel Decker, the ship. Richard found the book, and like that was a much earlier progression than I expected something like that to happen. You know, stuff with Boreal is happening, and there's a tie there to somehow to Eos, and you know, like there's these threads that are forming and seeds that are planting, but it's like, yeah, none of them have flourished just yet. We're still in the early days. But it was like the whole thing with like, even with like say Dr. Harrow or Gorebound, like I really, the way you guys handled all of that, like with Adrian, was such a strange changeover. Like you guys could have easily just, you know, had your quintessential D&D moments, fought a monster, got your like XP and got your like, you know, like did your whole thing, but you guys found a whole other way to like handle that. And that stuff for me, it takes me on a different journey, because I'm like, oh, I can throw the most like I could throw a gelatinous cube in there, and they probably won't just fight it. There might be something else they want to do. Okay, Rory might fight it.
No.
But it is like, it's just that kind of thing of just, you know, like don't ever underestimate your D&D table, because your players are always going to have different ideas and motivations, and if you're playing your characters right, that's exactly how it should be. So it's really cool that way. In terms of like say Decker and stuff like that, and with the ship and it sailed away and stuff, is there part of you guys that's like, all right, I'm gonna go find that ship, I need to know what it is? Or is it more just like, it'll come to us, you know, like we'll figure this stuff out when we're meant to?
Well, wait, before we answer this, I want to hear Rory's response to
sorry.
the character.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I didn't expect us to have so much trust and responsibility for Remington whatsoever, honestly. From my side of things, especially
I
from
didn't think you guys were going to trust Remington.
Well, he is the mayor, isn't he?
Yeah, he's the mayor of the school. That's right.
He's the mayor, yeah. Doug Dimmadome. Okay. But in reality, like, I didn't expect, again, so much trust from such a high level NPC upon us directly straight away. When it came to our interactions and like the whole Boreal, the firefight, whatever it was, the fifth years simply didn't exist. So it was strictly on us. That was a bit of a twist and a turn for us as well, to step up at such a low level to such a high stakes situation. Eos's perspective, she's still wandering. She's still figuring things out with the school itself. I don't know time-wise how long it actually has been we were in the school before you went off on the ship. 3, maybe 4 weeks.
You guys were in session 2 when the ship was a big part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
And now we're like 30 sessions away from that, if you think about it in that context. Like
It's crazy.
Yeah, it was one of the first real kind of things you encountered that changed the dynamic of the island or whatever, which obviously things come and go, but that was the first one.
Well, the whole school itself, like, there's so much more to even look at and discover. I think we've barely gone through the first layer of the cake with that place. Genuinely.
I'll come back to it in a later segment, but you mentioned that Remington is quite a high level character kind of thing. There is something to that,
yeah.
So I'll come back to that a little later, and we'll discuss that. I think it would be a good opportunity to maybe unveil and pull back some of the curtains on how the Wandering Isles works. But we'll discuss that in a later section. For those who are joining us today, we will be breaking down the sections into a few different videos for our channels. So I'll be taking notes along the way as well, and I'll make sure to circle back to some of these points. And if I forget, just harass me in the comments and I'll come back to you. But yeah, no, like, so if you take things like the ship and moments like that, before I so rudely interrupted Rory, I apologize. Like, are these things where your curiosity as a D&D player makes you want to go in search of answers, or is this the kind of thing where you guys are just being patient and you want to, like, just let the story unfold, or how do you approach these things?
If Rory had a Thrive Queen rogue, yes, he'd like to inspect it. As Eos, no, don't touch it. Don't look at it. It doesn't exist.
I feel like there's for Hatsu there's like a natural curiosity because the Maleficums is a family that he would got teached in Saiga no Toshi for sure.
You would have heard of them, yes.
So in his mind, Remington is kind of familiar, but also not at the same time. So he just heard a lot about the family, but he actually never met one of them. So he's kind of familiar, but also not, if that makes sense. So he tries to learn what the real Remington Maleficum is about, and wants to learn more about the story, but in a respectful way that he thinks will unfold after time anyway.
Is there any curiosity in either Busy or Hatsu about why your father knows Remington so well? Because there's a connection there. They know each other. So something must have occurred for that to have happened,
Yeah, I think, look, Saiga no Toshi was founded by one of the Maleficums as well. So I think there was always a deep connection between Hatsu's family, because they kind of took over the role as kind of the guardian class,
right? Yeah.
In Saiga no Toshi. So I think they always had like a relationship, correspondence. I would also assume, based on the background of Hatsu's family, that they would have like something like a student exchange. That's why I think that's also why Hatsu is there and his sister is somewhere else. So I think that's like more like a traditional approach where the families know that future bonds are also made with sending their kids out to different families and areas to kind of keep these long traditions of relationships alive.
Yeah.
So that I think that's really one of the things why his father might be in touch with him. And also, I haven't really, or Hatsu doesn't really know something about magic in his area. So Remington might be related to that as well. So yeah, that's what I think.
There's certainly a few doors to knock on for that, yeah.
Yeah.
For the other two, are there any specific... I mean, Remington, for you, Rory, I guess for Eos is quite important as well, for different reasons. Would that be the most important NPC to Eos, or is there someone else that you're feeling that connection with in terms of...
Eos, currently, Remington, because he was literally the hand that was... Well, he was the olive branch for her to get into the Arcanum. There's... Oh, what was her name? Crikey. The, like, half-goat woman? I want to know more about
Delphine,
yeah. I want to know more about her.
Yeah, that's a door that I'm excited to knock on a little bit more as well.
There's also... this is way back, like the introductory hall we were in. There was this person who also spoke in Seraphic. She was like this crystalline blue person. I can't remember her name. I got the notes on me.
Don't know off the top of my head who you're talking about either.
Yeah.
Apologies.
You're grand, don't worry.
Yeah, you met a lot of characters very, very quickly. Like, it kind of got thrown out pretty quick because the school was a moving entity, right? And there was a sudden flood and influx of just a lot of people very quickly, and you guys had your time, looked around, met some of the faces, especially some of the more like senior faces and stuff. But there's still definitely things to deal with and uncover at that school, if and when that time comes. For sure.
I just remembered that there was also an entity that Hatsu did spoke about. I think he told it to Eos that there was once a very famous adventurer in Saigo no Toshi, and his name is Charles Hanier, or was Charles Hanier.
Yeah.
And he told Eos about him, and as a fun fact, his wife's name was Serafina Maleficum.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like Saiga no Toshi and like the great names of that area. They have a strong relationship to the Maleficums as well. Yeah. Not only like as the founding entities, but also like in the tradition of that area.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Richard, what about you for Slate? Is there any specific sort of NPC you're drawn to connection-wise or anything, or you just...
Yeah, I think it's difficult because, you mentioned the ship, for example, and the things inside it and so on. I think the quick version is both me, Richard, and Slate are interested in exploring literally everything that appears in front of us, just from I want to see what happens, I want to poke the bear, I want to see, but on the other hand, I liken it to a small child in the playground. You want to go on everything and you can't go on it all at once, so you just have to pick one and then go from one to another, and sometimes the nearest one, you think your next one is going to be over there, but actually because you're heading this way you end up on that, so eventually you'll go back, but so there's a certain amount of momentum that's pulling Slate towards certain things. I think if left to his own devices, he'd explore quite a lot, and I think we've also found that there's a lot that he doesn't understand about himself and his own history and his own past, which would also lead him to have a curious nature anyway. So there's that element to it as well, wanting to experience things. And then we've also seen, I suppose, through his story that he's had moments that have triggered memories, but I mean, I, as a player, haven't figured out what they are yet. And Slate doesn't know what the thing is that's causing these triggers, and the only way to find out is to immerse himself in more of everything and, try and narrow down what's causing those visions, those memories. So, yeah, curiosity for the win.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way of looking at it. I mean, Slate's changed probably, I would say... Unless I'm missing something, I think he would be arguably one of the most changed so far since approaching even the intro to Maleficum over the 30 sessions, because you've approached that whole thing of like, okay, I don't want to eat this magical food. Like, that was a big thing in the opening arc, and I don't eat this magical food. So you stretched into like cooking and learning things, and then like we rewarded that with the chef feat. So like you start taking that on board, and now you're even using that now and becoming this whole sort of defined entity. So Slate is in the midst of finding his presence as who he is now, but still trying to discover who he was before, and it's kind of cool. And like, you've come face to face with a lot of your demons already too. I'd say arguably again more than some of the other players. The school has been like a harrowing experience for Slate for sure.
That was an interesting choice of words. A harrowing experience.
sure was.
I'm so happy that Hatsu didn't fuck up cutting your fucking what's it called? I always forget the name. Yeah, not his arm. The shackle.
The shackle.
The shackle. Yeah.
We had the gauntlet, that was, the racer or whatever. Yeah.
That was such a fucking cool moment. I laughed about it because normally Hatsu should have seen them before, but for some reason, me as a player, I wasn't aware. And then when you mention it, I was like, wait, what did he got on his arms? Jesus Christ, how did anyone never mention it whatsoever?
It was mentioned a long time ago, and it was something that Richard actually brought back up to me a while ago as well, just like these are here, kind of thing, but there was just never really an opportunity to just force it into conversation without shoehorning it into the conversation again. But it is something that was brought up somewhere near the very start, that he has these like kind of like the shackle thing on his arm, and it's just like it's part of his past,
And like a shackle, I suppose, makes you think of it in a particular way, but if you'd explain it as a bracer or a gauntlet, it seems something that would go a little more unnoticed.
That's what
But
it
it's
was,
the
that's
same
right.
thing. It's a piece of, metal, iron, whatever that was on him that he couldn't get off, but it just didn't have other chain links and stuff hanging off it in the way that people would think, oh yeah, that looks uncomfortable, you should get that off.
That's right. I
So
think that's actually
he's
how you
had it all
described it
along.
in the beginning sessions, wasn't it? It was like a gauntlet or something you said.
Yeah, exactly, like a gauntlet or a bracer. So it's something that wouldn't be unusual. I mean, particularly for people that do combat or archery or anything like that. You know what I mean? So it's not, or even just for decorative purposes. But obviously, as we learned, there was an actual functional reason why he had it. So it meant when he changed form, they could still say, that's still you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How for like Eos, for example, like you have Ducky and stuff like that. We obviously have threatened to kill Ducky probably every session since we started playing.
Yes, you have.
But for Ducky and like the evolution of that, is that something that you intended? Because I know you brought Ducky in. That was something we discussed prior when we were doing the making of Eos. Like, you want the horse, you kind of want to have this connection point. Like, what? I don't even think it was initially a horse. I think we discussed a few different things.
It was something else.
Yeah, and then horse was the most fitting for this type of campaign
Situation. Yeah.
And so it was something that we wanted to kind of explore. But you develop that connection with Ducky more than I would say any of the NPCs. Almost, you really push that you want to, and that's not a negative thing. That's just Eos. Like, you really built that into part of her character. That's something you want to explore. Is that something you like want to continue when you go back? Obviously, you left Ducky there to be safe, right?
Yes, because initially I asked, could I bring Ducky, and then I think one of the NPCs said, we might want to not do that. Hot glue factory. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, but going forward, she will
everybody
continue
needs-
to develop that.
But you got to be honest, Rory.
Mhm.
Is Ducky a reskinned raptor?
Find out next time on the Wandering Isles.
Next time.
I feel like Ducky is also the perfect companion, because I feel like, Eos would have cups of tea and just have long conversations with Ducky, because Ducky always listens, never interrupts, never makes her lose her train of thought, talks over her, doesn't have incessant chatter, quiet time. I mean, Ducky's the perfect companion. I mean, it just makes sense that Eos would do that.
And what I
For
love about
some
that
reason-
is that's actually part of Rory's story with Ducky. Like, I hope it's okay to say that, but in the Rory's story from the background with Ducky, that's exactly what Ducky is. So that was really well said.
But you can see it in how Rory plays Eos, and the things that she gravitates towards and the things that she shies away from, and the work that she's putting in to be part of a group, because that's much like Slate had to all of us. We all have a place that we came from, and we're somewhere in the middle of heading towards somewhere we want to be, or someone we want to be, and there's that transition and that change that we're all kind of working together to get through. And for me, it just fits so perfectly.
It's great because Ducky is an anchor point in her backstory. She also speaks to Ducky only in Runic, which has been established.
Yeah.
But it's something Richard mentioned with the gauntlets and this stuff, and Busyball up too. We haven't asked much about the actual specifics of our characters. We don't know how old each other are.
Yep.
Apart from who we've interacted with equally among each other, we don't know much apart from Dash specifically, because he talks incessantly about him and where he's from. We don't know much about anyone else.
But that actually brings me into something that you guys have kind of made happen. That is the campfires. That's not something we've actively done in previous campaigns. We've done it a little bit, and stuff, but this has been a real, for me, I love RP, so for me, I've been really enjoying that, because I'm learning a lot about your characters as well on that journey. I get to sit there and just watch you guys play your characters. Is there anything that's been brought up in the campfires, or anything disclosed over the last 30 sessions that you guys are kind of surprised by? I mean, Adriana maybe. She wasn't a campfire when she said it, but that one, I wasn't surprised that Ryan. I was really surprised, I should say, that Ryan dropped. But besides that, is there anything that came up as a surprise?
And before anybody says anything, there's also been a couple of moments that have been headphones off that some of us are aware and not aware. So obviously I've had times I've had my headphones off that I know people have had chats, but I have no idea what they've said. So there's been some juicy bits, presumably because that's why the headphones were off, that were dropped, that we all know bits from each other depending on who was in or out, headphones on or off. So there's a lot of that going on as well, which is really interesting.
I've liked that
so
as well. That was a
tricky.
suggestion from, it may have even been Richard. I'm not sure who brought that suggestion to the table, but someone mentioned it in one of the first episodes. Yeah.
I want to say Ryan. I want to say.
Says Ryan's it. But that was so tricky when he dropped the whole thing because we were on this like 30-foot long boat that Lissa, Dash, and Major are having this crazy discussion about.
It was heated. Like that was a heated session.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Busy and I are just fishing down and going, what?
I felt bad, yeah, because I only remembered after the session because I was so caught up in that for like 40 minutes. And I came back and we finished the session. I was sitting there by myself just to switch off my computer. I was like, oh shit, we never finished the fishing part. Like,
I love Campfire. Campfire's peak. It is peak.
You guys are make it though. Like when you guys are doing your watch, I like that you figured out your routines and established kind of like, okay, this is who I'm gonna talk to, and you guys come in and it's like just the most natural switch in conversation. And I'm like, oh, this is 40 minutes where I get to just watch my favorite show. This is dope. Like I get to just sit there and be a part of it. It's really cool.
It's Dragon Age Origins live.
Dragon Age Origins live.
I fucking loved the campfire last time when Eos always mentioned that she wants to live on a star, and just everybody picked on the fact that you get burned on a star. It's so fucking cool.
Like, how would you live there? How would you stay there? Like, have you thought this through? You were like, I guess I haven't. It was such a beautiful, poignant thing for Eos, and everybody else just took it the other direction. But that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, Dash. No strings attached. Don't worry about it. But what if... Oh, no. Crazy. So good.
We've had our, like, intense highs and stuff. Like, we had the court case, and we had, like, the Boreal incident with the fireball and stuff. And now we're, like, out in the wilds, and you're having these discussions. Like, is there anything that stands out to you as sort of, we'll say, like, it can be directed at the audience as well. I'd actually like to hear what people are saying in chat as well about this. But Richard and I have these discussions of, like, green, yellow, red lights and like stuff that we like and stuff that we don't like, and then we bring it to the group and we have these behind the scenes stuff of like, hey, was this okay? Like we kind of openly discuss things because it just makes us more comfortable as players, DM and stuff, and regular check-ins. I highly recommend it. All DM tables, home games or not, but definitely stream games, it's good to have these check-ins and stuff. But we were talking about things that we do and don't like and stuff that we particularly were surprised by and stuff. I'd like to know what people in the crowd are doing, and like people in chat for YouTube and stuff. I read every comment, so we all do because I bring the comments to our Discord as well. But it's I'd like to know from you guys, is there anything that like really stands out to you as like a surprising kind of, let's focus on the positive and say like a highlight perhaps, or something you didn't expect in that regard? Like again, the court case for me as a DM, I was like, I didn't realize I'd be suing the school in session 14, but you know, here we are.
I don't know how you did it though as a DM. That specifically, like that must have been exhausting for you.
That was a lot of prep, but it's okay. It was good. Yeah, these things happen. But I'm curious what for you guys as players, like, because it's we've really explored a lot of weird, like we've had our CSI moments, we've had our Law and Order moments, so like it's kind of, we've crossed a lot of genres. So yeah, what speaks to you guys?
For me, I like that, I mean, weird and wonderful things happen all the time, and that's the nature of the game, and that's the collaborative storytelling, etc. But there has been some, we'll call them key story arc moments that has created key response moments. So the example would be, if you gave the court case as an example, I will give soupy paperwork as the response. You know, where something happens that, you know, is part of the arc and is bringing the story forward, and then one of us has responded, or several of us have responded in a chain, have done multiple things to try and influence what's happening. And not that that's the basics of every session, but
credit too. I'd say you and Ryan lean into that very heavily, though. That chaos of like, how can I
think we all do it.
Yeah, you all definitely do it, but like you and Ryan are already, I can see it when we start something. You guys are just cooking. Like I can see it already. Yeah. But like all of you are really good at it. That wasn't meant to be.
I was just gonna say, I've seen everybody have really cool, interesting, dynamic character building or story arc pushing moments as a reaction to something that's specifically like a big moment, and I've really enjoyed so many of those. And you know, like the simplest thing, like let's take when the combat was going to start the other day, Eos's reaction was to run, which is perfectly in keeping with Eos. So sometimes the reaction, what was really interesting was developing the character further by doing something that, you know, your brain tells you, oh yeah, they're just going to roll for initiative and then fight, and then actually you're like, oh no, actually And
Oh,
I
he was
really,
running was a
I really like
good
that.
thing. Yeah, I love that. That's
Yeah,
really,
it's
really well
something
pointed
so simple, but I'm just using that as an example that every time there's a big story arc moment, there is multiple things that people do that just keep me hooked, and just some of the stuff that happens, I'm like, I did not see that coming, and it's just super engaging.
out. Yeah.
But if someone sneezed on Io, she would die.
Fair. Yeah, she has to run.
She
Yeah.
would die, or they would die, or both.
Both at the same time.
Like a candle in the wind.
One from disease, the other from probably lightning.
Yeah, for sure.
What about you guys? Is there anything
I
that stands
think-
out? Yeah, go ahead. Busy.
I think that there's a few things that stand out for me that make me really, really curious, because I know they did. They're kind of the first domino that got thrown. So, for example, for Hatsu specifically, the two intruders in the school were like
Yeah.
a big thing, because that will reveal a whole bunch of shit, I'm pretty sure.
That was so good.
Another thing.
That's another door I'm waiting to knock on again. I like that door.
Another thing is the Megaverse company, and how Dash did kind of find that body that was
In the
kept
vat.
in place. So the further we go in the story, the more we learn how the Megaverse company actually uses different creatures or abominations, that they might also be involved with creating these to kind of experiment and stuff. So this is also super interesting to me, because I don't know yet if Simo Decker is something like an agent in that Megaverse structure, or is he the BBG of the company that Remington just wants to keep semi-close to keep in check or whatever. There's these like political dynamics with like big parties on the board that keeps me very, very interesting.
You've mentioned that
And
a few
then,
times
for
in
example-
post shows. You're interested in how Remington is connected to certain people, and I like that you're asking these
Yeah.
questions. It's not just the how, but the why. Like it's really.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
6
Yeah.
degrees of separation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And the other thing is something that surprised me a lot was the how the crisis response unit operates, and on which behalf. Are they kind of like elite force that are bounded to the king,
Yeah.
or is this like a Wagner group, like? You know, like, I don't know. So maybe they're just mercenaries that got hired from people of power to fulfill certain things for them or whatever. Or like other islands that try to keep certain things in balance, you know? And these are super interesting, and I really, as a player, really want to know how these work, why these work, who's funding these, because they need funding as well.
100% sure you're going to be knocking on those doors.
Interesting. Yeah.
And the moment you said about the two assassins or whatever, or thieves as the case may have been, because there was some things there about the sword and so on, I think that also brought up a really important and poignant moment. I think that was one of the defining moments when Dash became Dash to both us and the audience. It all started with throwing his sword, and he's been fumbling his way through everything ever since.
No, but I think there was an interesting moment there, because around that time was the ship, and that's when Dash's accent dropped for the first time as well.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
I will give props to Kian on that, like that he has been slowly loosening the thread on Dash, but like he's really held back on it. Like, so there's just been moments where he laid something down and didn't say shit about it for 10 more sessions. Like, I love that. Like, you guys are all slow burning, but like props to him for the Dash thing, because that's a hard one to keep secret for sure. And you notice it now. Like, I noticed when we're sitting in the tavern and the door's closed that he's more like Kian's accent, and then like when the door opens again, it's suddenly Dash's accent's a bit stronger again, and I notice him switching in and out of it. It's really cool.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more going on, I think, with Dash than we've seen or figured out. I think
Don't even know who his mom is yet.
No.
She could be anyone.
Anyone
Absolutely.
with his lack of commitment to anything, yeah.
What about you, Roy? Is there any moments that really stand out to you?
Yeah, I was thinking there when you guys were talking. Up the uphill journey to Wes's death. That last bar we went to in Penzance, we were having the food, we're ordering great grub, we're having chat and everything, and the slow boiling stew of the upcoming demise of Wes. That was heartbreaking, but also amazing.
That was, without going too much into it, that's something that John and I had discussed about how he wanted to tell the story of Westland, and how he wanted things to go, and how he wanted to sort of, test the waters of the Isles, if you will, and stuff. There's like a lot more going on behind the scenes with all that stuff, and it's always hard to explain to players and to characters what's going on, but or to viewers, I mean, what's going on. But it is, it was really nice to sort of really see how much everybody was invested, because there was a sudden, as that started happening with Westland and you guys realized how far gone it was, there was a sudden panic. It suddenly shifted, and I could feel the energy from the group of how that shifted. That was a really nice thing, and huge credit to John as well. He played everything very well. He remembered to do certain things, and he would, like, if you watch back over it, it's actually really kind of cool, because I hadn't quite picked up on it, but the older he was getting, John would throw in the more occasional coughs, and he would throw in the more occasional, like, oh, Westland kind of just sits back while you guys run, or he does this thing. But it seemed totally like, okay, that's just John, and that's just how he plays D&D. But it was really, really how he was leaning into Westland, and it was a very, very cool thing. And watching it back again now, I've seen clips and I've seen different parts again, and we've been like organizing reruns and doing all of this stuff. I see it again now, and I'm like John played Westland to the T. Like, he really, really did.
So good.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Bring him back. Bring back Wes.
Back John. Is there, like, I would say, like, one of my last questions on this is just, again, it's about the party dynamics, since we're basically 32 sessions in. Amazing. At this point. Do you guys feel like the party's finally at a point of unification? Are you guys unified as a party? Are you like you'll take a bullet for each other kind of appreciation for each other? Or where are you guys on that scale of, like, just, people that you met versus people that you truly care about? Where do you guys line up on that bar?
I feel some ties are stronger than others on individual basis.
That's because you keep trying to push Dash off the ship and it won't work. But besides that,
he deserves it. He's going into the vat, whether he likes or not.
We're gonna rescue this stranger and put Dash in. Indiana Jones just swap them.
Yeah, like, I do believe Eos and Hatsu together are a force. You got Dash and Slate for sure, but
actually,
I don't think as a whole
it was
group,
said in chat there as well, Westland and Adriana was really good too. That dynamic, especially towards the end, was amazing.
That was so beautiful.
Like
so
an
good.
old fucking couple.
Yeah, groaning together.
And I really liked the contrast of, like, Adriana moving closer and then Westland just being like, what the fuck, man? Like, that was the first, like, quiet what the fuck. It's very good.
The tree. Oh my god, the tree.
That stuff's great. But no,
Those
right,
watts were perfect.
What do you think?
But yeah, no.
Yeah, I feel like as Rory said, like, I think if you have a big group, because you also have to consider the NPCs like Lisa and Ayame. So in that regard, Hatsu would also have like a deeper boundary towards Ayame for sure. But then
you guys
to
had
Eos
a good
as well,
headphones off moment that I won't repeat, obviously, but I thought that was a really nice moment. You two connecting in the tree was a really nice thing. Yeah.
Oh, you mean Adriana? Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you said Ayame. Sorry, I thought you meant Adriana. Sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, with he has more connection to Eos because the way she feels more familiar to him, if that makes sense. So she kind of feels like extended family in that regard.
That's interesting because you come from really close together. You guys are like a town over from each other too. So there's a really kind of cool thing there that's somewhere under the surface. I like that.
Yeah, and the other thing is that he kind of really feels her struggle. And he feels bad at the same time that she is from his region and these things are still happening, and he knows that they are happening, but he also knows that we can't do anything about it right now, because this is sometimes a thing that has to evolve, that takes time and trust, so people don't go at each other, right?
I think the way you guys handled Orla was pretty good, because there were definitely moments of you guys wanting to, like, I saw a few people who definitely wanted to take her head off very early and very quick, but you guys handled that in such an interesting way. It's almost like the Gorband thing again. You can choose who you are, like you define who you are. That is your responsibility as a player, as a person, as whatever. But when you guys are handling things like with Orla and stuff, that was very, very fascinating to me, because I made that as antagonizing as possible. I really pushed it, and you guys just took it and handled it.
Yeah, what I was about to finish off with is also the fact, like, I think always in a big group, like even in real life, like if you have a big friends group, there's always like one or two that have like a stronger connection because of certain things that might have happened, that they went through, or whatever, you know. In the end of the day, you all friends, and if anybody needs help for something, you are there. But there are certain talks you wouldn't have with certain people from the group. But that's the beauty of it as well, because if Hatsu talks to Eos about something that he's afraid of or whatever, he also knows, even if he doesn't have the direct connection to Slate yet, he knows she would let the others know. Maybe not the same way he said it to her, but she would like make sure that over time they would get an idea or explain it in another way. So also like how it would work in a big group of friends, where you have maybe one guy you talk very deep shit, and if that person knows, okay, he has these and these and these troubles, he would make sure that the rest of the group would also kind of get an idea of, not the specifics, but they would kind of know, like
put you some slack or whatever.
Yeah.
No, I like
so
that.
I feel like as a whole, the group is growing stronger and stronger with the connections. It's just slowly evolving that certain things also happen between different characters, if that makes sense.
Of course.
Same. I feel like it was yes, now it's a mixing pot, and everybody and everything is in the mixing pot, and you know, they're coming and going together as they mix. Whereas previously I felt like people were taking turns dipping their toes in, and people were on the periphery a lot of the time, and it was like, who's on the periphery with me? And depending on the episode, sometimes the person was on the opposite periphery or the same periphery, and there was a lot of skirting around things and a lot
Almost
of skirting
like a
around each
sitcom
other.
where they're like, have these two characters interacted before? No, let's write an episode for them. Like that. It almost felt like that. Yeah.
And then, you know, we've had all our trials and tribulations, and we've had a couple of differences of opinion, and we had, you know, the Boreal, the court case, the whatever. And, you know, like, let's take Hatsu and Slate, for example.
Right.
Didn't get off to a great start with all of that. Had two opposing viewpoints. Slate obviously has his book. It's very particular about who owes or who's right or who's wrong or whatever. And one of the things then that has happened since then is that you know, Hatsu and Slate are on the same team in terms of, okay, we weren't sure about this issue, we were divided, but then on the security of the school, we're on the same team, like exactly at the same function, thinking the same. It's about logic and about being preemptive, and you know, so on. And then there's these functional moments, like let's take the diamond. That was a functional transaction. It was given, but Slate is thinking, okay, well, you didn't have to give it to me. You did give it to me, so there was a trust there. But then also, Slate didn't have to give it back, but Slate went to give it back. And there's these moments where Hatsu's gone from being someone he didn't agree with to potentially an enemy, to then being, okay, acquaintance status. And now there's things like the gauntlet and the diamond, and, you know, we're helping each other where, well, you can't just be an acquaintance, okay, but you're not my best friend. But there's somewhere in between there that they're getting, where they have that, I feel anyway, kind of a healthy respect of, okay, we don't agree and we're not the same, But on the other hand, there's certain things we definitely agree on, and there's certain the end goal we agree with, or we can help each other, or we can provide as a group different things, and that's pulling us together. And I think the longer that we have these moments, the stronger the bonds will just come.
A big change for Hatsu in particular towards Slate, because he was like sus about him like a long time.
Yeah, you two had like as far apart from the party as each other as possible. Like
but what really changed his mind was when he got introduced to his hometown. That was a big change for him, because he saw this town and the people and how they would treat each other, like, and he felt like, okay, if something happened to him, that must have changed him in a way that made him lose hope in the world and in humanity, you know. And Hatsu had something like that as well, where he was kind of isolated, and then he came back to society and he realized how much shit is going on and how people could ignore that and live their daily lives in the way that they did it. So in that way, when he was in Penzance and saw like how open and welcoming these people were and how they interacted with each other, he feels so bad for Slate, because ultimately he understood why he is the way he is.
Right.
Why he has that bitter undertone in everything that he's doing, and like a more pessimistic approach to things and certain attitudes towards certain behaviors and people, if that makes sense.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. Like reflecting the Penzance part onto Slate is a cool way of looking at that. I like that. Yeah.
So in his mind, before he thought it was about him, but now he understands it was never about him. It was about how things were getting approached. Yeah, I like that.
When Slate bought the book up to EOS, that was a really cool situation we were in there. Like seeing this kind of, I'm guessing it was modified memory or whatever of the book of Slate, and being in that situation, and EOS wanting to like, please don't hurt him, to quote unquote book, as she still calls him or it or whatever it was. That was great. And before that, Slate and EOS had a small interaction during the Intruders, the assassins, where Slate had the tools to cut the bodies, and EOS was like, well, we can just dispose of them. That was a great.
Yeah, that was a different side of Slate than I was expecting. All right,
that was great. So like, so I Rory love watching Slate, and EOS like Slate a lot.
I think that you know, we've touched on different things, like I mentioned earlier about, we know that just bits of pieces that Slate can't remember memory wise, and finding out that he's older than he thinks he is and things like that. And then, you know, what you were saying, Hatsu, about some of the where he's been to where he is, and, you know, it kind of starts to paint a picture. But you know, I find that his moral compass, shall we say, is a gray area that swings wildly based on who he's talking to and the particular moment he's in, but it's all based within we'll call it a framework or a rationale, that there's reasons why he's accepting of some things and not of others, or he's like wishy-washy, or I could go either way with this. And I find that really interesting, because sometimes I don't know what Slate's going to do, and I don't see the situation and how it's developing until it gets to a point, and then all of a sudden it just strikes me, I think Slate would do this, and then I just, as I do it, I could just see people reacting, and I'm like, ah.
I saw a message in chat there as well from Mandela Jane, just saying, my favorite Slate moment, I am Dash, how are you? Anyway, that's boring. Let's talk about me. That stuff from the when you guys had your individual dream type scenarios, your training and tests, that was fucking great, man. That made me laugh so much.
I need to do that training again. I was so close to failing that it hurts my soul so much.
We had someone fail, so at some point it'll come back up again.
Man. God.
So from
That's
here,
great introduction though. For like praise to you, that training for us 10 out of 10.
Thanks. I'm
I
very...
I was so I love that moment so much because in campaign 1, I played a wizard, and for the personal quest story, to get more reputation, Roper did let him do like magic trials, and I was like, okay, I got this, because all the times in the first campaign he threw a trial at me, and I was like typical German, I was over prepared to the tits. And he would throw simple things at me, and I would do like super.
You were trying to do advanced calculus on
I would make astrophysics,
tests,
and he would say, "Okay, here's a needle.
Yeah.
What do you do with the needle?" And I was like, "Oh, wait, you know, when maybe he's talking about the atoms. Maybe it's about like how the atoms are ordered or whatever, you know." And then sometimes, like 10 minutes later, he was like, "Buddy, just try to think simple."
Don't overthink this. Yeah. It was.
So I was like, this time I was like, I'm not gonna prepare whatsoever. I'm gonna make it. It's fine.
The trope is true though. A puzzle for 5-year-olds.
Yeah.
And here we are going, no, we gotta speak to the stones.
I've had hours spent on puzzles for 5-year-olds. Yeah.
I was always like, it can't be that easy. No, he's not a simple guy. It can't be that easy. There must be something to it.
For me, what it was that you were trying to pass in the home game. You were trying to pass one of every school of magic test. So like there was a necromancy test, and there was a divination test, and whatever. And the main thing that it revolved around was eventually you would have to use a spell from that category or class. But I knew your spell sheet, so I made the lesson or the trial or whatever based on you using something that you have. And there was the occasional time you'd go in and you're like, okay, but I'm going to prepare my spells first. And you would go in and you'd unprepare the spell that I was like, oh shit. So how is he going to get through this? But you always found a way, so it was okay. But yeah, that was kind of a tricky thing, because you have to make it kind of not so specific that there's only one answer, but not so vague that there's thousands of answers either. So you have to find like that sweet spot. And you would always try and find like the one perfect answer, and yeah, it took a little bit of like, okay, just take a step back, look at the picture. What is it? A unicorn? Then it's probably a unicorn. So
Thought for us.
it's
I remember there was one trial where I think it was the first one.
could be.
There was like something was blue, something was green, something was red, and something was another color.
No.
And I was like, maybe some kind of combination. Maybe I have to find out this. I was there like 10 minutes, and he was like, buddy, simple. What comes into your mind when you think blue? I was like, like, I don't know, like a ward, like abjuration spells maybe. And in the end of the day, Avalon did put some water on it.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
it was just the elements.
And I was like, are you fucking serious? It was that easy? And I was like, oh, what spell? What magic? How do I do this?
The hardest part is,
I
as a
was like-
DM, is not trying to alter things to suit what the player is doing, even if it is highly advanced and awesome and stuff, because I feel bad if I take that away from them. Almost like there should be some sort of correct space that they can fall into. But yeah, no, it is a thing. We have
As a wizard player though, man.
We have a question from the crowd. It's from Deranged Reno. Is that right? Am I saying that right? Mr. Deranged
Yeah,
Rhino, thank you
Deranged.
so much for being with us today. He has asked, how stressed have the party been without their muscle? Came in to poke the bear. You guys
I don't
missing
know.
Adriana?
Well, what you
feeling
mean?
it?
Oh, she's not gone. She's just doing something else.
She's on a holiday, ain't she?
You've had an
No.
epilogue at the end of every session from Adriana at the moment to kind of piece together her story. Yeah.
Yeah, she's in Night City in Cyberpunk. or
Very
something.
nice.
She is in Night City in Cyberpunk. Oh my god, I did make Night City from Cyberpunk.
You did a description last week. I was like, what?
Yeah. It's
With this room full of the ancient gods. If Anubis is there, tell him hi.
Rhino said
Yeah,
doing
she's
real
busy
shit.
doing real shit, but I'm convinced she will come back with broken wings.
Oh, hopefully not.
Take it if as you please, but
I think
that story will change a lot. I think.
I think I'm excited for it because it's you guys have an adventure going on, but she has something else going on that's connected to like the overall lore of the world.
That's
So
good, though.
that's a really nice thread for you guys to pull on as well. Yeah, we miss you, Rhino, a lot. I'm really
Definitely.
excited to have you back. We have one more session without you, and then hopefully you're back with us. Because it's it's weird. It's weird. Like the dynamic changes when one person's missing or two people's missing. You really feel it. Like I like having you guys here as a group. Do not be sorry, my friend. You're doing a very good thing. We're very, very happy for you and proud of you. And we're looking forward to having you back, pal.
Delivering nightmares to children.
Rhino walked in at the perfect time because I know he loves this series as well. Next up is a segment that I'm going to call What If? So I'm going to ask you guys a question, and you guys can tell me what you think would have happened if something had changed in a pivotal moment of the Wandering Isles.
Is the answer to every question TPK?
Yeah, it could be. It's totally not taken from any specific group whatsoever. Could be Marvel, but you know. So I sat down and I was like, okay, I want to do a what if segment. So like, what do you guys think would happen, you know? And I was like, what questions do I want to ask? Or like, what do I think would be something that would be poignant enough to be important enough to tweak the entire realm? So I have a few moments. I found 4 specifically. So first question, what if Boreal's fireball had actually killed a party member? How would that have changed for you guys?
I can answer that from Eos's perspective.
Go ahead. Yeah, whoever wants to take it first, you're up.
It wouldn't change her opinion. Full stop.
Of Boreal, the situation, or
Yeah.
of Boreal?
Boreal.
That's a good answer. Yeah.
Coincidentally, my answer is the same.
Yeah, wouldn't have changed your opinion of Boreal at all.
Because in the moment and thereafter, the whole conversation was around it was something out of character that wasn't something he would normally do. Then it was, looked at deeper, and then it was found to be something that he wasn't in control of. And once you take the choice out of his hands, well then, it's hard to change how I feel about it. It wasn't his choice to take his action. So, that was the way Slate looked at it.
Yeah, you become the hammer in the hand of the woodmaker.
Right, like you're just a tool being used in that moment. Yeah, I'm curious about Busy's answer. You're so closely tied to that.
Yeah, I think as a result, Hatsu would have brought him home.
Back to Sagnatoshi.
Sure. Yeah.
Or just like, is that a really nice way of saying he would have like killed him?
No, he wouldn't have killed him, but he would have
removed him from his place.
He would have took the responsibility, and he would moved him for sure. Because he knows that the consequences for Boreal for doing that would be tremendous, and he would also know that if they would stay, there would be a lot of problems for Remington. So I think he would have left and maybe rejoined later.
Right. So you think Hatsu would have stepped back, brought him back to Sagnatoshi, and then seen that he was okay, obviously, and then come back to...
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Because this was not the first time, so he kind of knew. But he would also think that he would be too much of a threat.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty good answer. It's pretty straightforward. It makes sense. Like, in terms of what would have happened, I think for the group, for myself at least, I think that the way it all went with like Westland, I think would have been dramatically different, because Westland was being a hero in that moment. As far as I'm concerned, I look at it, Westland was just trying to stop what was happening, and I get his actions. He was trying to keep Boreal from doing anything bad or hurting anyone else or coming to that conclusion where he does kill a party member or student or whatever. But I think that if you're taking that one step further, like Westland would have been like saving lives and stuff, but I wonder if there would have been an aggression from anyone else or something. Like Westland's holding Boreal down, but does it change the view? Like Dash, we watched kill an old man 2 weeks ago for like just to put him out of his misery. Like, would Dash have responded, for example? I'd be curious like how that would have changed the dynamic. Like, would teachers have responded, or students, or anything else? We nearly lost like Eos. You were on death saves, right? I think.
Yeah.
And Madriana too, maybe. So and Slate. So like we were close. So like it became like quite a big thing very quickly. And I'm curious how the party would have taken it, especially in the early stages where you didn't know each other so well. Now today, I think very differently. I think you guys would go all out knowing what Boreal went through if he goes through it again. I think you guys are all there. You're just trying to diffuse the situation. You know what's happening. You have more awareness. But when you don't know, I'm so curious. Yeah. Like that stuff sits in my mind like all the time. I'm just like, oh, what would they have done if this happened?
And the group was also looser at that time too. We were still in the handshaking stage.
I think the what if question that would have been more different, I think, would have been what would the external view be, and how would the court case and or sanctions have gone had somebody have died. I think the stakes were up, not that they weren't up already, because there was a lot of devastation and damage and so on, but I think the aftermath would have been different. Not just how would we have reacted in the moment and what did we feel about it. I think the effect on the school, for example, there was the threat of the school closing, so if that had happened, that would have changed absolutely everything. Yeah, I mean, I think that would have been the bigger what if in terms of.
That is actually my next what if. What if the Academy had shut down after the trial? So there you go. That was my next one. Like I was curious, like, because that was a big moment as well. That could have gone either way. The swing would have been, like you continue like you did, or you don't. Do you go back home? Do you stay as a group? Like, what do you think would have happened had the Academy shut down?
War of the Buttons, we attacked the nearest school.
Great movie.
Just steal their pig. Yeah, what do you guys think? So like what do you actively think? If the school shut down, if you guys had lost the trial, and there was some of you who were rooting for that at the beginning of the trial. Like, so where do you think it would have been for you had the school shut down? Where are your characters now?
Oh man, like Eos at that time, I think specifically at that time, she wasn't too close with anyone. She probably would have gone to the library, see what was there, and then she would eventually just go back home because she's not really belonging anywhere else. Realistically, like if the CRU are there doing their freaking witch hunt, yeah, she's heading home. Hop on the horse, grab a bag of books, go.
I think
Hatsu would be home as well, for sure.
I would have.
But he would also know,
So it's really interesting because any moment that follows up with you guys being a group was all riding on that. Like if you guys weren't still, like if the Academy had closed or the Arcanum had closed, that would be it. Like there would be no more groups. So anything that you progressively do as a group, like save lives or do anything, any of those things, those key moments wouldn't happen had this not gone the way it did. And it nearly didn't. Like that was really down to like the end, and like a lot to do with things like Slate's fuckery with the soup and like those things, like really flustering him at the end. Like there was a compelling argument to shut down the Academy or the Arcanum, and not a very compelling argument to keep the Arcanum open, especially because it was speared the people attacking that were people who hate the Arcanum anyway and its purpose. Like they knew what they were attacking. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's weird. Yeah, I wonder what would have happened. I mean, it's D&D, so the fates eventually probably would have brought the party again together somehow, in some way. But or just
because I think Remington wouldn't have had I think he would have closed the school publicly for political reasons, but he would find ways to activate his networks to kind of, just pop up at another, like, pop-up store somewhere.
Underground.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
Magic has its ways.
Yeah, that's fair. What do you think, Rory, for EOS? Like, just go home, that's it? Or
Well,
you think...
I put it in perspective of the time, where like she didn't have many ties to the group in general at that point whatsoever. This is before we said much to anyone, and she's still quite shy. So yeah, she would have hopped on the horse and found her way back home. Maybe had some little micro adventures along the way, and chasing away from death the entire time.
Yeah, that's fair.
It was so early stages for her. That would have been the clean answer.
My next one was, this one comes from not necessarily just the status of like, okay, TPK could have happened or whatever. That's not what I'm approaching here with this. I'm curious more of the long-term ramifications of what you guys have done in this situation. What if Gorband had attacked the group instead of cooperating? Like, long-term, not the idea of you guys just get killed or it gets killed or whatever. I mean, long-term, like, how do you think it's benefited you that you helped Gorband? Or what do you lose by not helping Gorband? Is there something there?
He also wanted to kill him.
I actually remember that. Yeah, you really wanted to kill him. I remember that.
She's like, no, end of suffering.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of discussion about using different guises, but I suppose it's kind of like about a humanity of sorts, because we were talking about with Weslin, for example, a witch versus a monster, and what the difference is and which one is worse. There was lots of those conversations, and there was lots of moments about the equivalent of what makes you bad or what makes you really bad, and what level of bad is acceptable, because we all felt to some degree that it's come out that we all felt in different ways that we were bad, different, monster, wrong, whatever you want to call it. Bunch of misfits.
Kind of what Rhino said in chat there. He actually said we would lose our humanity. Like, that's kind of leaning into what you're saying there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, that's part of the journey that we're all on, is to find our place in the world, which is part of what the school was for, to have people and creatures like us that have talents like us to have a place in a world that doesn't necessarily want them, or at least not all corners of it does, or at least that's how it's perceived currently. So I think, like with Orla, etc., we as a group are finding that we individually and collectively are on a mission to prove ourselves and prove our worth to others. And I think there was a bit of a mirror moment where we were looking at a creature and going, well, is this an actual monster, or is someone just say it's a monster? And I think we were all thinking that internally as part of it. Although I would say immediately, if it attacked first, then I wouldn't have personally felt like talking. It would have been, you've made your bed and you're taking a dirt nap. That wouldn't be what I wanted, but that would be how it goes. Don't start it but finish it kind of scenario for me anyway. But I think it was a great opportunity that we were able to carve out in that moment, and we all felt that common ground, that pull of humanity, and we said, okay, let's give Gorband a chance. And every inch we gave, it took it and didn't push the boundaries. So then we said, okay, let's see where this goes. And it all went really well. And I think we were all grateful for the opportunity to have taken it,
I think Hatsu was taking a slower approach, because he first didn't know what kind of creature it was, but he knew it was somehow related to Dr. Harrow, and he knew what Slate went through and what kind of fuckery she does with altering things and everything. Also, these tree constructs that she made and stuff like that. So ultimately, in his mind, was whatever that comes against them might not do it on their own will, their own behalf. They're kind of forced to. So he was a little hesitant. He was ready, but he was hesitant because in his mind it was not Gorband's fault. So he was actively looking for something to work with, if that makes sense.
It leans back to what we were saying earlier about you guys being kind of forgiving to Boreal in that way, because he wasn't in his right mind, right? So that's interesting. What about you, Roy?
So this is the thing I was thinking about it there. Like at that time, Eos didn't want to go into the cave because she was dealing with the fact that she knew Wes was going to pass. So her state of mind was
That's right. Yeah.
different. When it came to be that Gorbon came out, the group was doing their thing. She was slow to react. She was, of course, angry at the overall universe right there and then. So she did want to kill it. But when it came to seeing the response to the bell, and I think Hatsu did something too.
Yeah, Dash definitely did something with that little bell. Like that
Yeah.
really, that was
It
such a
helped.
cute thing. Like I think that comes from the point of being a father, maybe finding a way to
Possibly.
distract it. Like I think that was the key in Dash coming out,
Yeah.
because that was like a really interesting. I wasn't dropping hints there. I don't think Dash has a kid. No, but
He
Kian
might.
being
He's
he might.
very NSA. Like you never know.
No, but like I think the father in Kian came out there and like trying to find a way to connect with it in a different way, where it's an entity that maybe doesn't speak so well or do things so well, but you know, there is a way to connect with it. And I thought that was a really kind of cute, sweet thing, like a very sweet little moment. Sorry, Roy, I cut you off there.
You're good. When Eos learned his name was Adrian, she went up, grabbed his forearm, and asked Adrian, "What do you want to do?" And Gorbon responded, and therefore her opinion changed. She didn't want to kill him anymore.
Again, trying to uncover the humanity in it. Yeah, you guys sort of all have a very common thread there. Yeah.
That was a good situation for us in terms of growth.
I think
Yeah,
I
a lot of
regret
what I'm
doing
trying to
this
throw at you
session
is through
already.
What?
I feel like, because I feel like we've just set our hearts on our sleeves for DM fuckery and our tears later. I feel like we've just just unveiled
Hey,
too
tell
much.
me everything that you guys really appreciate about the campaign.
Yeah.
My next question, this one, I don't think there's going to be any hearts on sleeves because I think it would have just ended in bloodshed, but we'll see. This is my my fourth one, the last one for the what ifs. What if Orla had contacted crew, the crisis response unit, thus actually bringing in your first introduction to the crisis response unit? I was pretty sure that was going to happen because she was very, very against Eos. You guys really clawed her back on that, and in the end, Rory, you mostly did a lot of heavy lifting because you just kept protecting her during that fight, and you were like not necessarily jumping in the way of anything, but like you had her back. I kept offering her tea and shit.
Yeah, I was conflicted player in that one, as you know from the DM, so I was very conflicted myself. Eos wanted to do this, and I was like, no.
Yeah, you went totally down the route of kill my kindness. I thought that was really interesting.
If it was me, it would have been different.
Maybe. I don't know. You're a nice dude. I don't know if it would have been that different. I think you would have tried to see the best in people. You always do. But with
That was
like,
tough.
say Orla, if she contacts the crisis response unit, what's like besides, you know, GTFO? Like, what's your actual response?
Disguise self.
I mean, Hatsu wouldn't blame her because that's kind of her
You get
role.
it.
She is the top tier hunter in that area, and she also dealt with a lot of threats. And since she told us, we, at least Hatsu, knew that there must be a small unit of the crisis response unit in the area anyway, because there's where she delivered the beast and got the money for.
Yeah.
So he knew that they would be kind of quick. So in his mind, the plan B was, plan A was like move forward with her and contact Remington and tell him everything that happened, blah, blah, blah. But if that wouldn't have worked the way it did, he would have beelined around the cities and stuff to the targeted area, because he knew they have to stone to teleport out at any time. So
just
it was
get it
just a
done.
matter of who's faster. And since the crisis response unit doesn't know where they're going to, they would have the advantage to basically get it done without getting caught, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
My thoughts on that is a bit like Batman up on the building. I think I would just watch and see, because it depends on what the crisis response unit did. I mean, if they arrived and decided to go on a super, like a cleanse, then they would become the target. If they arrived and were like, okay, let's find this one particular creature that's doing all this havoc, started fighting it, and then let's say we're doing well but then started to lose, I might be inclined to help them with a view to dealing with the issue to save the village.
Yeah.
You know, it just depends. So I think more information required from a Slate perspective. It would be the Magic 8 Ball says ask again later, for sure.
It's interesting because if you take it in, you're like, okay, this is how the crisis response unit responds to things. We don't get much of an opportunity to see this. If we just watch, what advantage does that give us the next time it's called, kind of thing as well. That's a cool perspective.
Yeah.
No, I like it. I definitely have some, like, I want to come back to some what ifs down the line, because there's a few moments that I feel are going to be, like, the more you interact with things, like, I'm really curious how you guys are going to interact with, like, Wolver, for example. Eventually, you're going to cross paths. You have to reach that point. But, like, that's also, like, an entity of just, like, it's not the first one you've seen, which will bring us into, actually, our lore deep dive segment shortly. But it's not the first one you've seen, but it is one of the oldest entities here. And since approaching the Arcanum, you have met several entities of substantial and significant age who have a ton of experience in this world. Westland in particular has spoken to one. Westland and Slate spoke to another one. Slate has another one in his backpack, and now Wolver as well. It is very quickly that, like, these entities that may have more information, more puzzle pieces, more whatever, are just being put on the board and put on the table in front of you guys. And it's like, it's definitely something interesting where, like, you're gonna see, I think, what it means to sort of not just be a powerful force, but to be what's called a legend. And that's what's going to bring us into our lore deep dive here. So when it comes to the lore deep dive, you guys are free to ask me questions. I'm going to talk a little bit. There's a few things I want to put out on the table and open a few windows, perhaps. And chat, of course, please feel free to contribute as well. When creating the Wandering Isles, there was a few factors of things that I really wanted to incorporate. Some things I find that I love in TV shows, movies, books, like just mythology, things like that, video games I play, whatever. But there was one thing I wanted to bring in that I really, really loved, and it was the concept of a legend and what it is. And there are entities in this world that are legends for a multitude of reasons, be it they've just been here for so long. They've just got a significant amount of power. They are high level. And Rory, that brings me into what you were saying earlier. You said that Remington feels like he's a high level character, comparatively even just to you, to use. But in truth, he is what would be considered to be a legend. It's someone who leaves like a massive legacy behind, be it good or bad, hero, villain, whatever. There are some key NPCs throughout the story that are going to be encountered that will be considered to be legends. That's just what I call them. Some of you have them in your bloodline. Some of you have encountered some throughout the story. Some of you will encounter some throughout the story, and it's just, there's a substantial amount of those throughout the history. I've created an entire timeline, which is 1,542 years of this world that have existed before, and it's all been built on the same kind of premises and ideas. The first legends, of course, being the emissaries of Paragon, and then developing from there as people become legends, either using their abilities, as I said, for good or bad. I'm curious to see how encountering these, first of all, impacts you guys, but second of all, how encountering something like Wolver is gonna really open up your view to these things. Like, if you take it in a head-on standpoint, you guys are going to get an elixir and you're going home. But realistically, what's happening here is doors are being opened for you. You're having opportunities to meet people. You met Orla. That's a really good example. She's not necessarily like a legend or anything, but she's somebody who has notoriety in that town, that space, and you left with a good image. That matters. Like, that leaves that door open for you to Dagtorp again in the future and stuff like that. Is that something that weighs into you guys as players? Like, are you considering these things when you're making your decisions, or is it more, this is just what my character does, or how do you approach these things?
100%. 100%.
That's a good answer.
I told you, like, the whole fucking Wandering Isles is a chessboard. And there's all sorts of political stuff going on in certain parties that we have to figure out. And I think the more allies or people that you can just contact when you go into an area. Like, for example, if I go to Ireland, I will contact you guys to kind of know where to go, what to do.
If you didn't.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying out loud, like in real life.
Small island.
No matter where I go, when I'm there first, I try to meet people that are kind of trustworthy to me.
Build connection.
Some kind of an anchor. So, and usually I keep these connections. And when I go there again, I know where to go, who to contact, you know. And I feel like Wandering Isles is the same to me, like for Hatsu anyway, because he was raised that way. That you need locals to, because when you're new to an area, the locals always have the advantage when you fight. They know where to fight, how to fight. They have like people that could join the fight, reinforcements, whatever. So you're always at a disadvantage if you're in terrain that you don't know, right? So the moment you can have locals that help you to figure stuff out, or they just know things that are commonly known in that area that you just don't know. So don't touch this plant because it's poisonous or whatever, you know? Yeah, it's that thing. So
we said don't touch it.
To Hatsu, it's a really big deal to kind of get to know people that he could rely on for information gathering and stuff, for sure.
Absolutely, that's a good answer. What about you guys? What about Richard, for example? What do you think?
I think there's a couple of things. I mean, touching back on the previous answer about humanity and us as a party. I mean, Slate individually, but it would appear lots of us are exploring our humanity, but also trying to leave our mark wherever we go. And seeing as we have been, you know, found ourselves in the Arcanum in the first place, which is a place of privilege, but a place of opportunity. You know, we are leveraging that privilege to be on these assignments, to go to these places, but then we're using the opportunity to make a lasting mark in the positive because the overwhelming history is in the negative, which is what influences the public opinion. And part of the school's, the point of it is to, you know, stay there long enough to be good enough to become something better, to be able to do better or to make positive change in some cases. You know, for an example would be if there was a raised threat, to stop it or whatever, to counter it. And it doesn't say how. I mean, it may be violently, non-violently, verbally, whatever. And understanding that each of us have different tools, but part of what we're doing at the moment is exploring what are our options to make a difference. So, you know, that gives us individual motivations to, you know, have positive interactions or to want to make an impact. But I think there's a higher calling or a higher purpose that we're all aware of, although we haven't vocally said it. We know that there's a pressure and an expectation on behalf of the school, but on behalf of the world, for us to go best foot forward. And I think as a group, we're starting to realize that we're all in that same mindset collectively. We're trying to do best foot forward. So that gives you the small and the large picture. Because if you do enough small footsteps, you create a big one, and so on and so forth. So that works for creating allies and leaving behind contacts, but that's how you have that butterfly effect and how you change the world, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Roy, what about you?
Yeah, so it's interesting. These legends and such. Eos loves stories. She loves them. She grew up within this whole library, whatever, full of them. So seeing eventually, fingers crossed, we live to see Wolver, she's going to be amazed by it. She, of course, will want to relay in a way to the, what is it called again? Lycanthrope?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she will want to see them as possible allies. She doesn't want to have to fight them or have a bad interaction with them because she might relate to them. You are also a freak like me, in a way. So she will want to build on not necessarily connections or grow like a whole hive mind of these different people, but to be able to go, okay, if I come back here, I might be welcomed with a cup of tea as well.
Sure. So you want to leave that door open and push that kind of thing, yeah.
And
so that's the focus. You want to. It's not, yeah, but it's like you're not trying to fight everybody anyway. Nobody goes. Well, there are murder hobos in D&D, obviously, but generally you don't. Generally, you don't approach. It's gonna take him a minute to shake that. Yeah, normally you don't approach a situation with your sword out, right? Like in this kind of thing. But for like, there's also a lot of reason to approach this with caution. Like, you've been given warnings. These guys are kind of like volatile, whatever. It is just a little bit of yeah, it's interesting to see like how you approach these situations. I'm perpetually surprised with how you guys drive this. Like, it's really, really cool. You definitely don't take things like, I didn't think Warbound was going to live beyond that session. That wasn't like a thing for me. I definitely didn't think you guys were going to go and build him a house. There's no prep work that I can do to come around for that. So for me, every door is always open because I think you guys are going to do crazy stuff. I'm still waiting for the flip side of that, where I'm like, they're going to love this NPC and you immediately decapitate them, but we'll see how it goes.
Well, Gorebound is now the mayor of Penzance.
Yeah. I wouldn't mess with him, so.
Because he killed everybody.
Yeah. The mayor and only living resident.
A hat made of skulls.
Yeah. Give me dome hat. All the way.
Maybe he just contributes so much in terms of the standard of living and fishing and moving things that he just gets so much popularity that he's voted in next, and he just becomes the mayor. He's just genuinely popular.
One hand, he can probably catch like 50 fish, so it makes sense. Like, you know, just one sweeping motion.
Yeah.
What about how, like, the flip side of that coin is, like I said, not all legends are inherently good. There are the bad ones, and there's one particularly
like
whose
in the
name,
book.
Absolutely. But there is one name who keeps coming up. The Archon. Like, the approach to that is a very, very set in stone thing. Like, nobody is thrilled about the Archon. People are afraid of the Archon. Liz is terrified of the Archon. And it's the only thing you've seen shake her. So approaching a legend like that is a very specific thing. That is a situation where I can imagine you guys approaching swords out rather than diplomacy.
You say that, but Eos doesn't know who he is.
I was just about to say the same thing.
Yeah.
I was just about to say, from Slate's perspective, it's like meeting up with a friend of yours who starts talking about another, like a friend of a friend, and you're going, I never met that person. I don't know who they are. So the story doesn't have relevance. It doesn't resonate with you. And sometimes you listen to your friend and you just take it on face value and go, yeah, I hate that person. Or sometimes you go, well, you know what? I've never had that experience. I've only met them once. I thought they were lovely. So you just don't know. Like, so, you know, Slate.
The newspaper doesn't come out this far for you, so she never read it.
No,
exactly. So Slate's gonna have to wait and see.
I think we're gonna have like a red wedding approach with this.
Oh no,
we just pretend that Amadriana's gonna get married, and we do this whole celebration things, and then we just go like.
Slate gets to use his toolkit finally.
Oh my god. You can do the second level spells.
I mean, the thing is, he did build his reputation on bad things, right? But sometimes these extreme bad people are the consequence of extreme bad leaders that's supposed to be good. So there's also a facet to that, because I would argue Amadriana couldn't come out that good if everything surrounding that person would be bad at all. So there must be something to it as well that we might not understand yet.
The product of your environment.
And I don't
Sounds like
think
when Ryan returns in January, there's going to be some questions.
Where'd you go? Where'd you got those scars? Where's your wings? Does no shoes?
Ken would never give us one of those "my enemy of my enemy is my friend" scenarios.
Oh, Ken would never do that. No.
No, I'm not a huge fan of that at all. I live in the morally gray of narrative storytelling, so that's my comfort zone. I like pushing you guys morally in every direction.
Weren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, that was probably outside the gray a little bit with Vecna Rat. When it comes to things like the mystical forces of the Isles, you've seen a little bit of that now as well in both Zephyr and again the book.
That's cool. That's good.
Yeah, that actually is my question. Is that something that like your characters approach with like caution, or they approach with excitement, or like how is it your characters are feeling about this sudden? Because don't forget, like 20 minutes before you approach the island, you'd never seen shit like most of this, and now it's just been every day. It's just some next level fuckery of like, okay, well that's just another supreme being of something. Like this island just shits them out. So like there is that element to it. Is it something of just like, is it overwhelming? Is it taxing? Is it exciting? Is it wonderful? Is it wondrous? Like, what is it for you guys?
But to me, it's easy. Hatsu don't know of any of these situations.
Fair. You're approaching a giant werewolf. You do know of that situation.
I mean,
but yeah, you don't know about the book.
He
That's
knows,
true. Yeah.
He knows from Remington who that is.
Hatsu lives in blissful ignorance. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah,
It's just happening.
he didn't know about the book. They never told him about the journey to the mountain, like what actually happened there, what they adventured. Right. Like, he doesn't know shit.
Hatsu was on his own adventure to build the school security and stuff like that. During that time, like he was just doing his own thing. Yeah, that's right.
That's crazy. It's weird to think of it that way.
You should let Hatsu hold the book.
Yeah. Next campfire, Hatsu and Slate.
Don't meta game.
When you talk about all the different facets of like creatures and like giant dragons on mountains and all the different things, like you say, is it overwhelming? It's this. It's very complicated to answer. But like, for example, when you mention the book, all I want to say is I want to touch it. That's it. I want to touch it. Stop it. So
yeah,
like,
Slate diving headfirst into that really caught me off guard too. I didn't expect Slate to be just like, I'm gonna take the book. Like I really thought you guys were gonna be like, fuck that book. We'll come back for it another day. We'll discuss this later. Slate was just like yoink and put it in his backpack and off you go.
The book is like, do you want to know everything you've ever wanted to know?
Yeah.
And Slate was like, yes, please.
In my mind, when I think about Slate in a book, it's always like he has this book and you have to imagine like disco lights, and then he's with the book, touch it, bring it, pay it, watch it, do it, leave it, stop format it, touch it, bring it.
That's it.
He's just going ham, like Bart style, you know.
Absolutely.
To be fair though, if Christy Moore offered me a book, I'd take it too. So,
God damn it. How about things like the cultural aspect of the Wandering Isles? I mean, 99% of the population doesn't trust, for example, Eos. That's just a given. But like, is there any of that from, say, your characters when you're approaching the school? You're just like, I would probably, it's a little bit hard, probably need a dash here for this, to be honest. But like, from you guys, is it really a thing of like, you look up and you're like, well, that's a fucking Minotaur. That's creepy as shit. Like, or your character's just like, what's up? As you walk by down the hallway past like 15 different species you've never seen before.
back to the magic thing, like for Eos to realize that she isn't the only purple-skinned, pointy-eared person in existence apart from
Remington was probably the first of that, right? Like when he approached you, I think he might have been the first person that, if I remember your backstory correctly, that Eos had met that was actually somewhat similar. That she's seen, yeah.
She's aware of another person similar, but never seen said person. And to go to the school and realize all these things she's read about are A, possible, and B, may have actually happened. Is
And
a whole different level.
Eos doesn't have to walk around covering her face at school and stuff
It's
too.
great.
Like that's, yeah, it's a nice thing. So
It's
for
a
you,
great
it's a nice
opportunity.
holiday, yeah.
True, but I have to be careful not to make her walk around in blissful ignorance.
Richard, you're like walking around with Slate, just picking up new personas and everything out of that. Like,
Yeah, well, I mean, like for Slate, you know, excuse the pun, it's everybody is a clean slate. Everybody gets their opportunity, and based on the interaction in front of him, they go into the book or they don't. He gets a positive or negative.
Right.
So everybody starts blank, and it's built from there. And Slate knows better than anybody not to judge a book by its covers. So its actions speak louder than words. It's about substance. So how someone looks doesn't mean literally anything to Slate.
yeah. I mean, that's a pretty fair answer. With Slate, like I like the thing of him shapeshifting into a Minotaur and kind of breaking in the bed almost a little bit when he got up after the hangover, I think it was. And so like there's just those kind of interactions that I'm really like keen on sort of exploring more and seeing more of. And like,
Well,
in moments with
I think as we start to travel further from the school, we're all getting a flavor. The bits of flavor from the world are seeping in, and it's painting that rich tapestry. And I think the further we go, the more that will happen. And I think there's a lot of that to come, and it's all starting to get interwoven quite nicely.
I think the approach of going to Penzance first was really interesting because it wasn't something that was necessarily planned. You guys decided to go with Adrian. It just led to Penzance. So it was just something that just happened. I wasn't expecting you guys to follow the story that far, which is exactly why I have like a 1,000,000-page document with like backstories, because I never know what you guys are going to do. But like, you guys went to Penzance, you went to where he came from, you brought him back, but it happens to be one of those places that isn't like, they don't go against magic users or EOS or anything like that. Like, they may have visitors that do, so they treat it with caution. They obviously err on the side of caution, but they also have like a kobold walking around, so like, you know, it's not like the worst, you know, like it's not the worst thing to them. So like, Slate fits in really well there if he wants to, you know, like EOS fits in there if she wants to. She has to cover up and hide sometimes, but like, if she opens the door to the mailman, he's not going to call the crisis response unit in 2 minutes. But you go to a place like Dagtorp, it's the polar opposite. If she gets spotted for a second, like even just walking down the street, you don't know who's going to call. Like, and
do you ever hear that thing, Maslow's hierarchy of needs? So it talks about, you know, whatever you need. So if you are starving to death, nothing is more important than getting food. And then if you have food, it's about getting shelter. And then if you have shelter, and it goes all the way up to, you know, having like a job and feeling good about yourself and having something to aim for. But it all goes back down. You have to have the other ones before you can have that one. So in places like Penzance, survival is more important than things like the politics or the magic. It's like, do they contribute to society? Do they help us live? Do they make life better? Do they pull their weight? But that is the box that needs to be ticked first. Whereas in places that have plenty or have less, let's say, less obvious hardship, then they're able to have something else as more important first.
Yeah, I like Dash's approach to walk into everywhere and go, do you support the king? Like, I'm loving that like approach to things. It's a very interesting.
It's fucking slapstick comedy.
It's interesting.
That stick's gonna slap him sometime. That's the issue.
Yeah. For Hatsu, it's a little bit different. He isn't confused about that people look different. He's confused about the different behaviors of people. Because there have been a lot of incidents where he got blamed for his actions on his cultural standards. But there were other occasions where it seemed to be okay for people to do the same. So he is trying to figure out, okay, there is different cultural do's and don'ts that also shift with the needs of that person, of that culture. So that is then okay. And he doesn't quite understand how that works. So he's more confused about these things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Not necessarily about like how people look, more like how they behave. Yeah.
Yeah, it brings it back to what you were saying kind of at the beginning of the live session, where it's kind of like a chessboard, because the nuance of how you move a piece is very different from tile to tile. So it's like,
yeah,
it's definitely interesting to see you guys explore that, and I can see sometimes you're dipping your toes in to see what you can and can't do. Dash just jumps headfirst long straight into the deep end, but like, it is like something that I respect and appreciate, because it's a difficult world that you guys have been dropped into, like especially for someone like what Rory's playing. Like Richard, your character, like, you have a lot easier time moving through this world, for example, than probably some of the others, because you can just change your face and off you go. Like, Hatsu has to wear a mask that might not be accepted in every place. Like Rory plays as Eos. Definitely not Roshi. Eos has to...
I made you a map of how that works.
I know, yeah. Eos is like completely the most difficult character you could try to play, or one of the most difficult characters you can try to play here, because physically she just looks magical, and that's immediately like a red flag.
I love it.
Richard, it doesn't help if you use your magic loot and start playing with mirages.
Well, look, I absolutely don't want EOS to be found out, and I don't want anything bad to happen. But on the other hand, there's that little voice that's like, oh my god, I really want to see what happens.
Hey man,
You know, not that
call it in,
I
get the
want to
money.
manifest it, but it's these things over the course of traveling the entire world that you've created for us. One or all of us, I mean, you just mentioned there, I almost made a heavy blunder. There's going to be blunders. There's going to be bad rolls. Shit is going to go down at some point.
Yeah, it's not an if but a when, I guess, because theoretically, just the way you guys also poke the bear, eventually the bear's going to react. Like there is just that. But it's exciting as well. Like I like it. Like I don't want anything to happen to any of your characters, but this we discussed this. We had this actually brings us into our next segment, which is just behind the scenes anyway, but this is a really appropriate time to do it. We had a discussion when we started. Like I laid it out. I was like, look, I want to play a hardcore campaign. I want this to be very fucking difficult. I want the people of this world to be very fucking frustrating sometimes. And I want you guys to have to play with like an edge of restraint, or if you're going all in, you really have to go all in. Make sure you understand there's consequences for things like death and stuff like that. There's a few homebrew rules we use to make things a bit more complicated and complex. And like, you know, like there's a lot of actions have consequences is how I always roll my games. Bonus actions have bonus consequences. But like, that's just how I like the way D&D feels to me. That's the campaigns I like to play. And the people that I handpicked are people that are very okay with that and understanding of that. And that's something that I really like. When it comes to something like this kind of world or campaign, like I'll probably start with Rory on this one. How do you feel when you play someone like Eos and you step out of the comfort of, say, the school? Now, she's only known her home, and then she has the school, which is a complete flip of what the home life is, and now you're back out in the wild, but this time you don't have the protection or comfort of your home, and this is a first for her. How do you feel stepping into a place like Dagtorp where you just realize, oh, like, these people just don't like me, and that's just how it is, right?
So that comes back to the brief. So originally, when I wrote in my application for the long ago The Wandering Isles, it was before the FAQ was written. I was like, okay, here's this crazy story about
to
this.
be fair, that's partly why the FAQ was written. Because
Exactly, but
I got 3 or 4 report things in, and I was like, oh, I need to clarify some things here, sorry.
yeah. But it was great because I got back the review, quote unquote, the review. We'll might go into that especially down the line, some metagaming episode or whatever. And I had to make a lot of adjustments, but I stuck to the core principle of what the character was.
Yeah, you didn't
Still
go too far away from it. You just moved it towards what the world is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just put that person, change their clothes, put them in the world, change structure of how they came to be. I was sticking to that. Eos had interactions in her past which pushed her back into going back into hiding effectively.
Yeah.
She put her toe out, got stood on, went back in, and now she's
very Dash pulled her toe out. Like like you didn't really get yourself in trouble in that time.
But at this point, she's out in Dagthorpe now, going towards Broadtier?
Broadtier, yeah.
Yeah, that place. And thankfully to her friends, her companions, they're doing the hard work because she knows of ways to, okay, I'm going to sit under the tree, hood down, pretend I'm asleep, no one's going to bother me. That's fine. The guy's like, no, here's makeup. Haas like, hey, take this covering. We'll bring you in.
Yeah, as a team, they really kind of committed to that.
The
I will
whole
say
band
Dash
is there.
Dash is almost that's again something that Kian is really, really good at, is very subtly learning from his mistakes as a character, not necessarily just as a player, but both. But in this case, as a character, he called you out, so now he's working really hard to make sure that he can't call you out again, because he, like, the whole thing with like Amadriana and Dash, he didn't really, like, it wasn't Dash's fault necessarily. It was Amadriana and Dash, and they misinterpreted the situation and didn't know how it would go, and they tested the waters, and unfortunately it just didn't go in their favor. It happens. But like, Dash has worked really hard to kind of rectify that. He really wants to help you with that, and like Hatsu as well with the thing, and like Slate as well. You guys all kind of banded together to just like, okay, we need to keep Eos safe. The thing at the cart when you were entering Dagtorp at the end of the last session. No, you were entering Broadtier last session, sorry, and the guards were like inspecting the cart and inspecting everything, and Dash just stepped up and just kept pulling their focus away and kept pulling them back, and then Richard would do the same thing. He was like playing the lute and stuff like that. Slate. And so it was like this whole thing. I'm really enjoying that evolution of you guys defending. Yeah, like it's just the kind of the whole layout of what you're doing. I've really enjoyed watching. But based on what you're saying, like I'm liking seeing the evolution of how people are evolving to help EOS. Does that make sense?
That's crazy.
Like, yeah.
I would never have expected it, honestly. Like I have ideas what to do in certain situations, how she can escape or disappear if necessary, but I don't have to use them because the guys are doing all this work. Like we got Potsu the drummer, we got freaking Slate the guitarist, we got Dash the bassist. It's fantastic.
Oh, we're making a Wandering Elves band.
Honestly, one shot roll bars.
What a way to infiltrate towns, man. You guys are the
Starting in January, we gonna have. I'm preparing, buddy. I'm
all the
preparing.
backseat bards, barbarians. Fuck yeah.
Yeah. What about for you, Richard? Playing Slate, like, I mean, you have a disadvantage in the fact that you don't remember a lot. So, like, maybe you've been to this town before and you don't know. Maybe you take a persona or something and you can encounter these kind of issues. It's very easy for you to stumble onto a problem that you've had in the past that you may not recall. But, like, is it a stressful thing for you as you approach a town, or is it, do you approach it with more excitement, or what is it for you?
How I've played Slate so far and how Slate's reacted so far, it goes back to a few minutes ago we talked about not judging a book by its cover, and you judge people by their actions. So Slate's life, if you get me, has been very like hand to mouth, very piecemeal, and everything has happened, I suppose, quickly or out of his control. So what he's learned to do is adapt to the situation, both in how he looks, how he talks, how he acts. So he tries to read people, read the situation, and call the ball in the air, as it were. And that plays into the fact that he doesn't remember or doesn't know who he's talking to or where he's going or whatever. And he's very much learned that he has to do it that way. And as Slate acquires facts, figures, information about what's going on, then he can make informed decisions. So that also goes into the narrative of why he's curious, why he investigates things, why he tries to think about everything, because that's all he ever does, because he's always trying to figure things out.
When you were creating Slate, is that something you wanted to approach with, or is that something that narratively just developed over time when you got used to playing Slate?
Both, because I built his skill set to be good at investigation and things like that because I had that in mind. But how that physically manifests, that goes back again to that grey area and how he changes depending on what's happening in front of him, and why that moral compass sort of changes. And that's part of that as well, trying to blend in, trying to get the best possible outcome, and not trying to be so rigid, because that wouldn't work for him to change into other people or be a certain thing in a certain way. So he has to be fluid and has to do it that way. So it's something that Slate has grown to do, and something that I as a player am trying to stay fluid and not, like historically I played the lawful good paladin or whatever. I don't want to lean into that and go, that's who I am, because that's not who Slate is. And Slate is still figuring that out, so as a result, so am I as a player. So that flexibility is super important, and therefore not being rigid on any set of rules to say that I must or I have to, I think is key for now anyway.
His moral ambiguity is as flexible as his physical ambiguity. Yeah,
it has to be.
I mean, a question that sort of would come up for me, for example, for you, Hatsu, would be, like, you have a very strict moral code, like more than, I would say, like, you're actually kind of the opposite of Slate in that sense. Like, Slate has a very specific line he follows, but Hatsu has, like, this is the way the world works. Everything else around it might work differently, but for me, this is my world. Are you, like, is there a way for Hatsu to sort of adapt to these different cultures, or is it more of a strict thing of just like, okay, that's how this culture is, it doesn't change me or define me? Do you approach the towns and you go, oh, you know what, actually I like this quality of life that they live, maybe I'll take that on as something and add it to my routine in the morning? Or, like, how does Hatsu approach these things?
I think he wouldn't change too much from his routines, because these teachings go back way before the ancestors did, he knows. So he also understands there is an importance to keep certain cultural aspects, to keep them alive, to give them to the next generation. But in terms of understanding, he is picking up a lot. So for him, it's more like learning new languages, new codes, try to understand why people do things a certain way. But on the same time, he also tries to give impulses to also think about a bigger picture. Like, for example, as he did with Dash when they were talking about killing stuff, you know? And when they talked about, then Dash said, yeah, you only eat plants, you're not killing stuff, right? When he explained that he also killed stuff because every plant is living too, and they also have their ways to communicate and stuff. Yeah. So it's more like for him trying to also advocate for his view and the teachings that he received, but on the other hand also acknowledge that people have different views and that they might also be correct. So what he tries to emphasize is that there is more truth to reality than only one.
Right.
And that everybody has to find his or her way to approach the end of your journey. And that the most important thing is that you feel good with the path you chose. So your journey feels right, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
But he wouldn't necessarily, for example, he really is proud of his robe, because his outfit is basically also a commitment to the family, and it's more like in German we would say Tracht. I don't know the English word.
I don't either.
Which means it's like a very special uniform to a certain region.
Right. Okay.
So, like with the kilt, you could read from the stickings on the kilt. You could read where somebody would come from, right?
Yeah.
So they have the same tradition in Saiga no Toshi, where the families would have traditional costume. Yeah. So they would have like certain things that would be on that outfit, so you could read which family. There would also be codes to honor the ancestors from that lineage and stuff like that. So he's very proud of that, so he never ever would change his outfit. And speaking of like masking and shit, for him it is like a religious code would be. So he's just not allowed, so he wouldn't tear it off, like no matter what.
He's
and
like,
if there would be people that wouldn't accept it, he wouldn't be mad about it. He would just explain, and if people wanted to force him, he would go full force back, but he wouldn't actively approach that. But on the other way, he wouldn't ever let somebody take that away from him, because it is a huge part of his identity.
Yeah, I mean, but that actually brings me to like a sort of a point there. So I mean, he has discipline and he has structure, and these are all things you built into Hatsu. So before you knew even what the world was like, the rules we were playing, you had already basically formed Hatsu. You knew what you wanted to play. Is there something from like your personal life or something that pulls you into playing Hatsu like that? Is there a reason you wanted to focus on this or try this, or is this just something you felt comfortable with? What
Absolutely.
brought you to that? Yeah.
There was when we did the metagaming behind the scenes thing. I also explained that Hatsu is very much the fusion of two people that actually lived or are still alive.
Right. Oh, that's right.
And
you did, yeah.
that is an important part, because this is my way to honor these two men and also honor their teachings. And a way to try to get some of their philosophies to keep them alive, even if it seems to be fictional. A lot of stuff that Hatsu is about and his ideals and how he approaches things is not fictional. It's just a fictional character in that sense.
Yeah.
But the things that he comes with are from reality, right? So most of the stuff is like basically one-to-one, if that makes sense. So I really tried, it was my idea from the beginning to build, of course, some of the stuff that he's doing might be fictional, but on a broader picture, if you would knew these two persons, you would very much see them in Hatsu for sure.
Yeah, you definitely.
And that
broke
was my
down.
approach.
Yeah, more in the thing as well. Yeah, absolutely. And is that so? That's something like obviously you approach the Hatsu with like utmost respect. Like that's very, very clear. I've had that compliment given to you from other people in chat and everything, like all the time. And discussions with people behind the scenes and stuff that like obviously you approach Hatsu with a great deal of respect for the culture that he's based on. But it's nice that you like really put yourself in that, and I think that goes for all three of you. And the other players who aren't here, but it is something that like you take a piece of something you love and you bury it into this character, and it makes you very passionate about it. Like ultimately, I mean, it's everybody's game. Like I've created a board for you guys to play your game on, but you bring so much to it, and we don't discover any of this if we don't have you guys doing this. So I do value that. I do appreciate that, and I love that you guys are putting that kind of work and effort in. If you guys saw like behind the scenes when I got the packs from the players, like of the first initial thing of just here's my character and here's what I want to do, like every aspect and facet of it was thought out. Like most of you came with like even down to the clothing of like this is how they dress, this is how they dress in this situation, and this is how they talk, or this is how they act, or this is what they think about. And like Richard's was a lot more complicated. We've discussed that I think in the metagaming thing as well, but it's like Richard wanted to know part of the story and uncover part of the story. And so like there's a line, like an underlying part there where the player meets the character when you're both realizing something at the same time and both expressing that. And I like seeing that kind of stem through all of you as well. It's been a really kind of cool journey in that vein of watching you guys explore all of this and figure all this stuff out as players, as characters. And I have to imagine that behind the scenes for you guys in your campfire chats and stuff that I can't see, that it's got to be just you guys like, oh, this is definitely this, or this is definitely this. And I've been really watching you guys play and explore that in game as well, and seeing that, and I really appreciate it. You guys are really doing your best to uncover as much as you can, with a little bit of foreshadowing here and there that I throw out. With player collaboration for you guys didn't, when you were coming to the table, we didn't even 100% know who would be at the table. We got, I want to say it was like 18 or 20 submissions or something like that I filtered down eventually to about 6-7 people that we then got to do this with and stuff like that. So your characters were already formed at this point, so you're all free to answer this question. But is it more difficult for you guys, because you both have experience with approaching a table where you know everybody at the table or some of the people at the table, or like at least have some experience at the table, like you know who you're coming to, but this time you came to a table where you didn't really know the world, you didn't really know who would be with you or posing like on the opposite side of the table with you guys? Was it trickier making your character this way?
I didn't even think of that when I made EOS, to be honest with you. I had a very specific backstory, kind of somewhat inspired by a specific scene people in chat might know of, where Vegeta arrived on the planet that Goku's on.
Dragon Ball Z. He's talking about Dragon Ball Z.
Of course. I wanted this alien creature in this universe Roper created.
Right.
Because I got that feedback in the FAQ. I was like, oh, okay. Here's an opportunity. Boom. And Master of the Players, I had an inkling, a couple people, but like the one shot we had beforehand with Biz and Ryan was fantastic.
Yeah, I did some test one shots before the actual game to test compatibility at the table with a few different people. like see how certain groups get on in a small setting and see just that the vibe was right, you know.
I have just realized that I joked outside of the live setting that we should have brought Yum Yum into the game. I
No.
can still bring Yum Yum into the game.
Please
I'm a
don't.
shape changer. It's just dawned on me.
No.
Yum Yum was a lizard folk that just like really wanted to eat people. If I remember,
Licking people.
licking
Everything,
people and
yeah.
stuff.
Just eat everything, yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, like, is it so for you guys? It didn't really impact you too much, like not knowing who was in the episode table. Does it change for you at all?
And not to me at all. I mean, this time I was knowing more about people than in C1, if you remember. I only did know you,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Ryan, and Jay a little bit
gaming,
from
yeah.
playing like, I don't know, let's say a few weeks of Tarkov.
Yeah.
But we didn't know each other at all that good. So
Yeah, we were actually like
this
kind of
time-
new friends, and I was like, "Hey, want to play D&D?" And you're like, "Okay."
Yeah, because you were all hyped about it and you did a shit ton of prep to do your first campaign and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I love fucking role-playing games, so why not? I've never played it. And then it dragged me really, really much to it.
Yeah, you went crazy.
So, but-
like you developed your character level 20 super quick, as in like you just planned the path out because you just loved reading about it, which was something very unique. I hadn't seen that before. Yeah.
Let's say I didn't sleep a lot for like
I remember.
4 weeks or something.
I remember. That was probably the most we
Yeah.
talked as well, because every day there was a lot of back and forth about like character stuff and build up as well. There was a lot. Yeah, it was cool.
You know, I think this time, like, usually I don't write characters towards a group. I feel like a character should always feel unique. A character should always evolve from a creative process within yourself, no matter what the setting is. I think this is the most healthy way to play a long-term a long-term campaign. And it would work really, really good for me in the first campaign. I felt very good about the character from start to finish, how the character evolved. And the character that I wrote the first campaign, he changed a fucking lot. He changed a lot.
Hey,
But
I mean,
it
I
was
don't-
part of his backstory. So I like to approach it that way. And yeah, you make adjustments here and there, like depending on how the party reacts. But I feel every play style should have a place at the table, without other people getting mad at it. And for that reason, I didn't felt the necessity to try to change it in a way so I would think that it would work better, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good
For
answer.
me, it was a similar process. Like I made the character, as we all did, in isolation because we didn't know anyone else was making. But I think it stems from making a character that you want to play rather than making something that you think will work, because ultimately you might not enjoy playing it. So if you start with an idea, a concept, I mean, Rory was talking about the Dragon Ball Z idea that, got you hyped. If you can find a concept, an idea, something that you enjoy, something that gives you that excitement, energy, focus, whatever it is, once you find that, then you can build with that. And about building a character you enjoy, lean into whatever draws you, whatever type of character you think would be fun or interesting to play, and then from there all the facets go onto that. I mean, it's like Lego blocks. The more blocks you put in, the quicker the following blocks go in, until all of a sudden you look at it and go, wow, didn't realize that's what I was building, but this is what it is now.
That's a really good way of looking at it. You're absolutely right.
one at
Yeah.
a time. Yeah, that's how I did it anyway, for sure. Just focused on what I would enjoy, and then towards the end you could look back and maybe make a tiny tweak or fill in a tiny gap, but overall you've got the skeleton.
That's amazing. Like, I think when it comes to D&D, like, there's two main ways, obviously, that people can make their characters, I should say, not the players. Their characters. You can sit down together and you can formulate a crew or a group and say, this is our backstory, this is how we know each other, and you can skip the whole we meet at a tavern kind of thing. Or you can go in the other direction, which is like, what we did, which is completely blind. None of you knew anything about the others until you walked in. And I honestly, for me, that was a really cool, almost social experiment. Watching you guys like explore not just the world, but your own character, and still trying to find a footing in it where you're discovering about the other characters as well. It's just like, I don't know. I think that this is how I would probably approach a lot of my campaigns in the future. I really like this approach to keep you guys fresh. And like, if there's some crossover, like two people want to come in at the same time, then maybe, yeah, we can sync up some stories and stuff. But I think, yeah, I really think that that's a nice thing. And you guys have really flourished with it too. And these campfires wouldn't be as significant if we hadn't kept it that way. I think the fact that you guys go so heavy into RP is because you don't know. It makes the player and the character equally as invested, which is a really nice thing.
Well, we're sharing in real time because it hasn't been shared before, so yeah.
Absolutely.
I remember watching the rerun a couple weeks ago of session technically 0, where we all come off the boat, and sitting there on my laptop just watching everyone else's reactions to each of us in character. The way Majorana was looking at our shoes and all studying our way we were, and Eos was there, little heels hanging onto her horse going, what the where am I? And then you had Hatsu coming off beautifully respectedly, and Slate coming off tired, and then you had Wes and Dash with the accent and the suit. It was such an upheaval of completely different characters from different parts of this crazy world.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, I mean, the big thing, I think, I don't know if you remember, but I think it was session 1 almost. Dash, when he got off the cart, he was really overwhelmed by the different things he was seeing because he came from Popolov, he hadn't seen them. But Eos was something he was overwhelmed by. His warm-up to Eos was quite quick, but I thought that was really unique because he didn't even know what Eos looked like until we started discussing pictures and showing what you guys look like and stuff. There wasn't even that level of it, and I thought that was a really unique take on it. Ultimately, I suppose kind of my last sort of wind down question, bringing it back around to where we even started with all of this. We've gone through 30 sessions. You've gone from discovering the Arcanum, meeting Remington. You've gone through like Boreal's attack, and then the people attacking Hatsu happened basically one night after another, and like the whole thing with the court case, and like going through that, and then there's the ascent through the mountain, and then speaking to ancient beings and spirits, exploring the island, still doing your classes, finding hallways and hidden passageways within the school, dealing with Harrow and her tree minions and Gorebound, and then going to Penzance and bringing him back. You've done a lot of stuff. And at the moment at the moment your current arc, like, you're going from town to town on a real D&D quintessential adventure. You have a map laid out, you know where you're going from path to path, and you're discovering things as you go. So my last question is for all of you, but it goes to the future, not the past. Is there something that you guys are trying to, like, say, let's say Slate, for example. Is there something that Slate is trying to get from this part of leg of the adventure? Slate approached all of this with trepidation. He didn't even want to go to the Arcanum. And now he's a part of an adventuring party. He's out there. He's doing something that normally third years don't get to do. Like, for taking Slate as an example, and I'll come to each of you, is there something that Slate's trying to get from this specifically, without delving too deep into spoilery territory?
Yeah, I mean, like, having spent so much time, I suppose, in hiding or on the run, whatever way you want to put it, was a bit of a lonely existence. So first of all, there's that camaraderie, and just there we talked about the first session and off the boat, etc. Yeah. I mean, Slate spent all of his time at the back trying to blend in, but lately he's not trying to blend in. He's just being. He's just there, and sometimes at the forefront. So that's personal development. Whether he knows it or not, that's just happening. So there's that. But then the other side of it is he's lost so much of his memory that he's still trying to figure out who and what he is. And at the same time as having all that personal growth, development, and camaraderie, he's getting snippets of that as a byproduct. And actually, either one is the byproduct of the other. So either way, Slate is winning by being a part of this. So he will follow this train down the tracks and, see how far it goes, because there's so much going on for him that it's not worth deviating. So for him, it's about just taking it for all it's worth. Same way he took the book with both hands. It's the same thing. That eagerness, that curiosity, and that overwhelming need to know drives everything and always has.
So, I mean, but in doing so, it has also opened doors, like the book you said. Like that is almost the key to the door that, like, Slate is exclusively knocking upon. So, like, there is some stuff there that's really interesting that should be good for him. So I'm excited to see that turnaround for him, that he found his purpose and his reason. What about for, let's say, for Eos? Is there something that you're looking for from all of this, or is this just, Eos just wants to get out in the world and actually see it, and this is an opportunity for that?
Partial opportunity. But the reality is Eos wants to find out what she is. She knows her dynasty, her family history. Yeah.
What she is interesting, yeah.
She doesn't know what she is. No one's told her what she is.
Yeah.
She was a grape baby.
She's a gremlin.
Grape baby.
Apparently, she was a grape baby, according to her neighbors.
That's fair. I mean, that's a good question, and that's a good thing to start going for. There's definitely going to be some things that'll shed some light on the stuff for Eos for sure.
Exactly. It's such a great adventure she's on right now with the gang to find the elixir or something. I can't remember what exactly it was, but this opportunity to go on this crazy
Moonbane elixir.
Moonbane, that's it. This crazy snowy island with a volcanic history, and after encountering this guy who's wearing fake Arcana robes, who was maybe a fire elemental, maybe not. Could have been freaking Shenron inhabiting a body. Nobody really knows. There's a bounty hunter. There's snow yeti kind of creatures. All this crazy stuff that assumed to be wouldn't exist in this universe exists out in the wild. Penzance, we thought was going to be this place where witches get hung, but no, there's Dragonmore walking around.
He wasn't walking around in normal garb, but yeah, for sure.
Sure, yeah. There's so much to uncover. So much of it, and it's so cool. And the way you've created this kind of shroud of mystery to the point that we didn't even know who's at the table at session 0. And we showed up at this pier going, right, school, here we go.
Yeah. That was the beauty of session 0, I think, was taking you each 20-minute-ish segments through it, because that was the first time you were all uncovering all of that, and I like that. And for Mr. Hatsu, like, you're disciplined, well trained, you have like a lot going on for you. We've gone over this. What can the world actually give to Mr. Toshitsugu on his adventure?
Oh, a lot. I mentioned the chessboard and all the things.
This is his
like
favorite
that's
part.
that's the board you see, but promise there is 2 more boards that you can't see. And Hatsu is doing one side of his story, but there's another side to it that he's also approaching as well, simultaneously. And since we arrived at another major city, there will be a lot more of these other boards that come into play, I think. That's why it's so great that Ayame is with him, so that makes things easier to keep them secretly, I think.
I've been enjoying that too, having some NPCs there to help you guys on this part of the journey that you can actually rely on to just sort of fill in some of the gaps, because that's to be expected, that players approaching a new world are going to have some questions that maybe even the characters know, but it helps.
I can say so much. There's a reason why Hatsu's father has a connection with Remington, and there's also a very specific reason why Hatsu got sent out to the Arcanum.
Yeah.
That is all part of the other boards that he also has to play on. That's also the reason why some people might be there in school to slay him.
Yeah, there's a few things that'll come back for each of you. Like your side stories are not forgotten, although it might be harder to do that while we're on the road. It is something that'll come back to you. There's always going to be threats.
Find him.
So
Who?
we have one more question from chat then before we wrap all of this up. Mandela Jane asked, how long does it take to get the how long does it take to work out all of the this level of detail for your characters? Basically, did it take a long time for you guys when you were coming up with your sheet and thinking about all the nuanced points of your characters? Did it take a long time, or was it something that just flowed for you?
Oh man. EOS. Okay, so EOS originally was a specifically on a storyboard project that I did in second year of animation in college. That took 3 months. Her adaptation for The Wandering Isles took a good solid 2 weeks after that, so nearly 4 months in total from concept to creation. But the finer details were within those 2 final weeks that I had when I got the review back with the FAQ. So the actual concept took much longer. The finite details came to being because I was playing a home game campaign with Roper anyways. I knew certain extent of how characters were to or not to behave, so that helped a lot. Yeah, 4 months.
Nice. That's a long stride. Yeah, when we were writing like the parts of EOS together to fit into this world specifically, I remember there were a lot of like questions back and forth because you wanted to keep it like, that's what you were saying earlier as well, but you wanted to keep it true to the dynamic that you wanted to build, but also true to the world itself. And you worked a lot and collaborated a lot to make sure that did work with the very finite amount of information I could actually give you.
And I'll do it again.
What about you, Biz?
Yeah, I started to write on Hatsu right when Ken told me that he's gonna write on Wandering Isles, and we shared some ideas and we talked a lot about it. And then I was super hyped and I started to write on Hatsu, and from the start to the finished CV of 32 pages that I did send to Roper, it took me like 6 months.
Yeah, you did
But
a lot of work.
like I love to because when you see, like when a DM is creating a world, you have to think about a lot of things, like what is in this world, how does that world work, how does the city work, who is in that city, and all that stuff. So I try to put the same effort into my character. So I first thought, like, who is my character? Then I thought about, like, what class would he be within that confinements of the character, what makes the most sense. And then I did write a whole family history. I did a history for him. I did like a philosophical approach where he might want to head to. And then we fleshed out like a full family tree, like who's who come from where, background stories about the family members, some lore about them, where they got their teachings from, and how do they fit in the lore of the world, why are they at the position that they are at, and all these things. But it was so much fun to do, because when I wrote like the first few pages of background story, I gave him to Roper to review it, and he adapted some stuff from it so I could further work on it. And that was so cool, because then you can really focus. So you have like the framework, and then you can focus on the details, like how does the character actually behave, what does he like, what doesn't he like, what is his own philosophy, why is it that philosophy, how did he approach that, what did he actually learn to come to that conclusion. And if you spend like a lot of time, like as I said, around 6 months, you start to really identify with that characters, because you know so much detail about their very being, that you have an easier time to get into that character, because it feels easier for you to feel like the character.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I like that. It's been it's been good. I like these catch-ups, these check-ins. It's been quite eye-opening and enlightening. We definitely want to do these kind of things again and try and get some of the other members in as well. We appreciate that a lot of people were hyped for the Wandering House today. We apologize. This is how the dice rolled for us today. But next week we'll do our final episode instead. We just did things a little backwards. No big deal. Next week we'll do our final episode, and we will take our break for Christmas and stuff like that. So we hope that anyone who celebrates the holiday is having a wonderful time and you're having a good December and everything's going as planned smoothly. But we will be back next Wednesday. That's the plan anyway. Slate, did I just cut you off?
Yeah, no, I was just letting you finish.
Chat did not let that go. Chat did not let me go there. I apologize. Slate, I thought we had you. I'm so sorry. I thought I started with you. I'm so sorry.
No. So for me, it's interesting because of some choices I made. So first of all, it was a lot quicker than the boys. I only took a couple of weeks, maybe 2 weeks or something like that. But part of that was a decision that I made talking with Ken, where I opted to not know everything about my character and not know all of the backstory. So that meant I didn't have to write it all out or think about it or do it. But much like our what if conversation, I had a lot of what ifs with Ken. So instead, we'll go back to my Lego block analogy. I put in a huge amount of Lego blocks, and then I handed him scenarios where I said, wouldn't it be cool if, and I gave him 10 different color blocks, and I said any one of those threads would be amazing, or anything
and I said
similar.
No, and I got my Duplo blocks and I started playing by myself.
Yeah, so that was that kind of thing. So I came up with the core idea of Slate. I came up with the fundamentals, which allowed me, like Hatsu said, to understand how he thinks, how he is, and what he might do. However, the character was, born out of flexibility and born out of not knowing everything. So everything he does hinges on that. Like there's a lot of sandbox elements to his development, but there's also a lot of really well thought out stuff that necessarily haven't been explained or hasn't been revealed that will be in due course. It's not as simple as Ken will figure it out and I'll just roll with it. There was a lot of thought.
There was a lot of thought into Slate. If I painted it any other way, that's not intentional. We discussed Slate a lot. There's a lot of conversation. I wouldn't have just taken an application that said, hey, you write my story for me. So if there's a reason you're at this table.
There's a lot of again, I'll go with what ifs. There's a lot of what ifs, there's a lot of quirks, and there's a lot of mental gymnastics and things like that were discussed. So the character took me a couple of weeks just to work out the fundamentals and to build the building blocks that I needed to get started, and then to pose as many questions, what ifs, and get the creative juices flowing with Ken, and to give me an idea of a starting point for particular moments or elements of Slate. So that's probably a kind of a vague answer, but it's probably as clear as I can be.
When we're approaching the hopefully far away from now ending of this campaign, I think approaching that conversation again with you, Richard, would be interesting, and looking at how Slate developed from what we did to where we got to, and then explaining, how we actually created Slate, with where we can actually discuss spoilers, is going to be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I think it would be cool at the end of the campaign, whenever that is, for everybody to actually reveal their packs, the whole packs.
It would be really cool.
Because
their whole pack is very long, but their character pack, for sure.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
100%.
Because that would be great, because it would be, like you're saying there, to be a big debrief, and it would show the arc off screen, or what we thought might have been the arc, or what was envisaged versus what it was, and then you have the in between, which is the stream and everything else. So that might be really cool.
I know it may not seem like it as well when we only have half our table here today, but the players are actually incredibly dedicated to their characters and to the campaign, and I think that also stems from putting so much work into what you've built, not just as your character, but your pack, and then taking the lore, taking the time to learn it, taking the time to go through it, and introducing yourself to these characters and forming real connections. It feels more tangible when it's I'm actually learning about you. and stuff. And I think that all of that has really leaned into what you're saying there. Yeah.
What Hatsu said about what I said about building a character that you want to play or something that you love, and then what Hatsu said about the more information you create. So when he got to the 6-month point, he felt, he understood the character, knew how they would act, and the easier it was to play Hatsu, having come up with that much information. That all comes together, that we're all invested in our characters, and the more invested we are, it's a cyclic, it's a cycle. It draws us in and pulls more out of us to RP better, to, it's a living document that's evolving, and it's always growing, and the more it grows, the better we're able to perform, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. Like, that's a really good answer. I'm glad we heard it and I didn't cut you off completely and just end the stream. Couldn't have happened. Wouldn't have been me. Couldn't be me. So, I mean, ultimately, yeah, like I'm excited to see where your characters go. I'm excited to see where the other characters go. I'm excited to see some of the things that I know are to come, and definitely more excited to see the things that I don't. You guys are all knocking on doors, and some of them I don't even know what's behind them, because you guys are going directions I didn't expect, and I'm really, really excited about it. I really appreciate this year. I'm really looking forward to 2025, the year of the Isles. We will make the Wandering Isles story something to remember, and I'm really, really eager for it. For my players, the ones that are present and aren't, thank you so much for being a part of this year. It's meant a lot to me. I've really, really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to my power going out. I'm looking forward to the is that like the stage production thing? They're like, you're out of time. Like, they're telling me now that I have to go. They're gonna start flashing the light. Like,
the music just gets higher.
Before the hook comes in.
Credits just start rolling over me. But like, ultimately it's been an amazing journey so far, and as far as I'm concerned, knowing what this campaign is, you guys are still just in the early days. We haven't got our title credits yet, so you guys are still learning what it means to be in the Wandering Isles, and I'm really, really eager to see what that means for you guys in 2025, especially post Wolver, however this goes. I'm very, very excited. There's going to be
he's going to join the school. He's going to come back with us. It's all going to be fine.
I am the school.
Hatsu might eat his brain because he thinks he get his knowledge that way.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
don't you touch Fenrir. Don't you touch it.
I know a good recipe for
oh no.
I regret the chef feat. Those of you in Twitch chat, thank you for joining us. Those of you stuck with us on YouTube as well, thank you so much. This will be cut up into segments, and a full version will be uploaded for your convenience, whichever you prefer. In the meantime, we are going to raid, not host. Said it correctly this week. Ragnar Rolls. They're on session 6 of Ashbourne Unchained, and we have DM Matt going through it with Dio, Vasith, Genevieve, Saoirse, and Josephine. We wish them all the luck in the world, and we thank you with all the love in the world. It has been... Nope, that is not the command. It has been an absolute pleasure, and we appreciate that you've been here with us. Keep the questions coming. We will do our best to answer them. We answer the comments, we answer in the in Discord, and we will answer, of course, here as well. We will post show after our Wandering Isles every single week, and we will continue to do so. Hosted by Mr. Rory and Mr. Keen. For now, the raid is set up. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Looking forward to the next one. What do we say when we raid people?
Multipass!
It's not what we say. Shit. Okay, well, we have raid emotes if you wish to use them.
Yeah.
And we saw in our Twitch recap, actually, that was our most used emote, and like the graph is crazy because we have our other emotes are all down here, and then like the raid one is just like way up. So thank you so much. We love and appreciate you. For those of you who celebrate it, as I was saying, please have a wonderful holiday period. And for those of you who don't, have a wonderful holiday period anyway. Who's going to stop you? Thank you so much.
This time next week on the Wandering Isles.
Long ago to go in the future.
Bye.